Chapter 645. The dog-head men leader sent Nangong Yun's mace flying with a blade. With another slash, Nangong Yun disappeared without a trace. Nangong. Vivian was a flower fairy now, so her small body was very nimble. She immediately circled around the dog-head men's body, trying to restrain them. She never thought that the dog-head men would give a loud roar and Vivian's mind would shake. It was like she had been attacked on a spiritual level and she fainted on the spot. Shwa. A wave passed. Vivian had also been resurrected. Meng Yingying was shocked. Even Vivian had been killed. Go, go, go. Everyone go. These large characters that could summon the wind and rain in the real world all charged forward. In the end, the dog-head men leader did not have any problems even after being hit by several dozen arrows. Rather it raised its two blades and wildly chopped down, killing over 100 people. The Wind Moon Empress cried out in alarm as she was hacked to death. Eunice, Lancelot, and these real-world experts could not even take a single blow from the dog-head men leader. They were all sent to heaven in a single move. Don't retreat, we won't really die anyways. We have to exhaust him to death. Whoever can kill the dog-head men leader, this village will belong to that person. The dog-head men leader's vitality was very strong. Even when facing everyone's attacks, he did not fall into a disadvantage at all. The two giant blades were raised and an incomparably fierce blade chi storm appeared. Fuck! Chu Tian, the Meng Yingying sisters, Yun Xiao, Yun Yao, Feng Kaidai, and the others were all within the range of the blade chi. When the crisscrossing white blade chi swept over, they did not even have a chance to dodge. They were all covered by it and finally turned into white light that disappeared. Damn! The Miracle Commerce Group had all been killed. It was destined that they would not be able to obtain this village. Miracle Commerce's own people were this miserable, so it could be seen that they did not know anything about this. The dog-head men leader's spirit energy seemed to be endless. As his injuries became heavier, his attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Every time he sent out a blade chi, it would kill a group of people. But no matter how strong the dog-head men leader was, he had no way of defending against this endless encirclement. Finally, there was an anguished wail. The kobold leader finally fell to the ground. Its corpse dropped a large number of spoils of war, including the two kukri blades he used, a large number of pills, materials, and so on. Everyone knew that this was the Kobold Stronghold's Lord's medallion. Quick, grab it! The wild beast emperor hurriedly shouted. Everyone had expended so much effort to take down the kobold village. Wasn't it for the sake of seizing the initiative and obtaining this stronghold? Now that the Lord's token was right in front of them, these people who were fighting side by side just a moment ago immediately became hostile to each other. In the end, they killed each other to snatch the token. The wild beast emperor directly threatened, "Who dares to fight with this emperor? This emperor will destroy his country." For a token, they actually threatened to destroy their country. This fellow was really hopeless. These people didn't care about him at all. Since everyone had come to the Miracle Continent, they had changed their faces and even their races, so how could the wild beast emperor know their true race and country? Not to mention that the continent was so big and everyone was in different areas. Even if you were an empire, how could it be easy to destroy a country? While everyone was fighting for the token. No one noticed that from a gap between everyone, a little snow-white fox suddenly came out. She quickly jumped in front of the token and used her mouth to grab the token, immediately escaping from the crowd. The Lord's token had to be held for a period of time before it could take effect. Whoever obtained the Lord's token would become everyone's target. After the little fox obtained the Lord's token, she suddenly disappeared. The little fox was a member of the demonic race, so her innate talent did not disappear on the Miracle Continent. Relying on her teleportation ability, she left everyone behind. After around a quarter of an hour, there was a golden light that fell from the sky onto the little fox. The first lord of the Kobold Stronghold was born. Everyone's lungs were about to explode from anger seeing this. Everyone had spent a large amount of time and energy, but it was finally taken away by the unknown little fox. The little fox suddenly turned into a little girl with a flash of light. Her eyes turned into crescent moons from smiling, and her two little hands held the large token. She said in a childish voice, "I'm selling it, who wants it?" Everyone was stunned. The wild beast emperor looked around. The other people on the same level as him had already been killed in battle. He immediately revealed a look of wild joy as he pushed through the crowd. "What price do you want? Say it." The two of them haggled over the price. Finally the wild beast emperor opened the bank and sent 100 million source stones to the little fox's private account. The little fox straightforwardly gave the lord's token to the wild beast emperor. This was a happy situation for everyone. Although 100 million source stones was not a small number to the wild beast emperor, it wasn't enough to cut off their flesh. This kobold stronghold in the wild beast emperor's hands was worth more than 100 million source stones. The little fox had no use for the stronghold, so she could use this chance to earn some money. She opened her spiritual account and 100 million source stones was sent in, which made the little fox very satisfied. Although her master was very rich, that fellow was too stingy. She had to earn money herself these days. With this starting capital, the little fox could obtain some insider information. She was prepared to earn a large sum in both the real world and the virtual world. Ha, ha, ha. This came from the wild beast emperor. The other competitors had already been taken care of by the kobold leader, otherwise how could it be this easy to buy a lord with just 100 million source stones? It had to be known that this was the Miracle Continent's first private lord. Just the face earned was worth more than 100 million source stones. The wild beast emperor sent his subordinates to search the stronghold. "Emperor, we've found many treasure chests in the warehouse, they are all spoils of war." "Emperor, we've found a transport tower in the center of the stronghold, it has already been activated to transport to the sacred city." "Emperor, we've found a recruitment field in the stronghold's training camp. We can use source stones to buy kobolds to guard the stronghold for us." "Emperor, we've found a trial tower for the kobold stronghold, it seems like it can open a trial space for the stronghold." All kinds of harvests and reports came in, making the wild beast emperor unable to close his mouth. There was no need to mention the value of the space warehouse, the spoils of war, and the transport tower. The kobold training camp was a very important place because the kobold stronghold could be attacked by others. In order to protect their territory, they had to buy large amounts of kobolds, which required source stones. But what did this bit of expenditure count for to an emperor? The last pleasant surprise was the kobold trial field. Although the wild beast emperor was a spirit beast, since he could become an emperor, he definitely wasn't stupid. He had already realized what decided the value of a stronghold. First was the location. For example, a town's location was very good and there were very precious hunting grounds or resource fields around it. Or perhaps this town was at the edge of the current exploration area, so if one wanted to explore further, they had to go through this place. Then this town would have a very high value. The kobold stronghold was half a day's journey from the sacred city, it was without a doubt the furthest place. Moreover, there were many hunting grounds and resource fields around it that could increase one's strength early on, so it had a very high value in the early stages. If the location and surrounding resources were external factors, then the internal factors of a town were even more important. If a city had a complete set of facilities, like a space warehouse, arena, trial field, business street, tavern, theater, real estate, and etc., then this city would easily attract people to settle down, so it would naturally have value. The kobold stronghold was just a trivial stronghold, of course it wasn't this complete, but it had a special trial field. The name of this exclusive training field was Kobold's Herb Garden. The materials used to produce it included low-grade yuan essence grass and low-grade life grass. In the real world, everyone knew that yuan essence grass was a recovery herb, and everyone knew that life grass was a healing herb. Now that the Miracle Continent had just been opened, this kind of resource was in short supply. Countless people would come to the kobold stronghold to challenge the trial field and obtain large amounts of herbs. Whether it was for personal use or to sell, it was very valuable. Whether it was using the legends of the Kobold Stronghold or challenging the trial field of the Kobold Stronghold, it was very valuable. The Wild Beast Emperor had picked up a large bargain this time. After the Wind Moon Emperor and the Burning Heaven Emperor learned of the situation, they were seething with anger. They never would have thought that this barbarian would pick up such a large bargain. But they were not discouraged. Wasn't it just a broken stronghold? There were many places like this around the sacred city. They had to find one and occupy it. This was not just a fight for benefits. This was a fight for face between the emperors. The Wind Moon Emperor gave an order to the domestic helmet production department. From now on, when the helmets were produced, they would buy 20% of them internally. She now realized that selling all the helmets was a mistake. She should have prepared an army to compete in the virtual world. If she had done this before, she wouldn't have lost to anyone. The other emperors all followed suit. In short, the Miracle Continent had only been open for a few days and these people were already like a raging fire, playing very intensely. Other than the intense competition for territories and resources, the Miracle Continent's academies were also preparing to open. Other than that, the spiritual library, spiritual research facility, arena, and etc., they were all being used. The charm of the Miracle Continent was quickly blossoming. I'm about to reach the Big Dry Empire. Meng Qinggu received a message from the real world. Now, my diplomatic group will begin working in the Big Dry Empire. How is it going on your side? Chu Tian revealed a smile. I've already finished half of it. I don't need to worry about my side at all. Alright, then I'm assured. Meng Qinggu bid farewell to everyone after saying this. She took off her helmet and prepared to work. Chapter 646. Night fell on the Miracle Continent and the sacred city became even more bustling. The sacred city's Miracle Grand Hotel became a popular place for people to spend their money. The Miracle Continent was very similar to the real world, but it wasn't the same as the real world. For example, the Miracle Continent made people feel hungry just like the real world. But there was a difference between an illusion and reality. In the real world, if one didn't eat for a long time and couldn't replenish their energy, even the strongest cultivator would find it hard to endure it, dying in the end. Even if people felt hungry on the Miracle Continent, it wouldn't directly kill them. In other words, as long as they could endure the discomfort and pain of hunger, they wouldn't die even if they didn't drink anything for 10 years. This was the main difference between the Miracle Continent and the real world. The rich could spend their days on the Miracle Continent, tasting all the delicacies in the world. Normal people could eat delicacies that were hard to taste in the real world. If the poor could endure hunger, they could eat once every few days or even once every few months. Of course, most people couldn't endure the discomfort of hunger. Since they could enter the Miracle Continent, it wasn't like they couldn't even eat. Not to mention that under extreme hunger, the strength of their spirit energy would be greatly reduced, so it wasn't good for adventuring or production. The flow of time on the Miracle Continent was slower than the real world. This meant that eating 3 meals in the real world would be eating 9 or even 10 meals on the Miracle Continent. The food and beverage industry was a very important source of income. In the future, when the Miracle Continent had hundreds of millions of people, Miracle Commerce would have a large profit margin in the food and beverage industry. The Miracle Sacred City's advantage was that from the moment the continent opened, all the facilities were complete. This also meant that for a long time in the future, the Miracle Sacred City would have a monopoly on food and beverage, lodging, entertainment, and etc. Of course, there would never be a lack of smart people. Now there were some smart merchants that began to pay attention to the potential of the Miracle Continent, spending large amounts of money to buy stores in the Miracle City's sacred city. They would sell them when the price increased in the future, while also investing in food and entertainment. These services didn't affect the balance of the Miracle Continent that much, therefore real-world source stones could be used here. If they could take the lead in the market, there would be a large profit margin. The Miracle Continent was filled with life. Almost everyone was fighting like they were on stimulants. This was because everyone here could become an expert of the miracle continent, and there was not just one path to becoming an expert. Some people could find special secret realms, ruins, and treasures in the wild, or they could kill special monsters to obtain precious treasures and secret manuals, soaring into the sky. Some people could also form their own forces and gather manpower to attack cities and plunder territories to become a hegemon. Some people could stay at home and walk the purely commercial route, earning huge profits by reselling resources and investing in virtual assets. They could purchase medicinal ingredients, pills, and equipment from other adventurers and develop into the top experts. A diverse world could not be short of ways to play. Adventure, domination, and business were the main ways of playing on the Miracle Continent. But that wasn't the only way to play. The Miracle Continent was filled with endless possibilities. He would give a few normal examples now. The Holy City was rich in cultural, entertainment, competitive content, and related construction. Now, a set of professional players had been born. Contestants fought in the virtual arena. During this process, they could defeat their enemies and obtain victory rewards. Contestants did not have to run around to hunt or participate in trials. Even if they became professional contestants, they could still continue to grow stronger. Other than that, the natural entertainment value of the competition was enough to create a trend. An outstanding competition would attract the attention of many commoners, and it could even be broadcasted in the real world, allowing the entire world to watch the competition. This was without a doubt a good time to create a star of the competition. Various powers would place people with talent in the arena to train themselves. Other than the competition, researching knowledge or creating an outstanding film or artwork, they could obtain source stones or pills and herbs in the virtual world according to their value or popularity. In short, whether it was adventure, domination, business, competition, creation, or learning, the entire world was built on a very complex but fair system. Therefore, as long as one could reach the peak in any field, they could become a person above everyone else in the virtual world. This was the most attractive part of the Miracle Continent. Chu Tian left the Miracle Continent and first looked over a set of data. There were several million people on the Miracle Continent, and in just a few short days, they had already spent over 500 million. The main spending was on real estate, food, tools, shopping malls, and various services. There weren't many people entering the Miracle Continent in the first batch, but their spending power was shockingly high. The retention rate of these people was very high. Even emperors like the Wind Moon Empress and the Wild Beast Emperor were all infatuated with the Miracle Continent. This was also understandable. No matter which great emperor it was, in the real world, whether it was cultivation or influence, they had already developed to the peak and reached a bottleneck. There was not much room for them to break through. Now that there was suddenly a new world with unlimited potential and extremely interesting, how could it not stimulate their desire to compete? Chu Tian looked over the data and found that the emperors had spent 80 to 90% of their time on the Miracle Continent. Unless there was something very important in the real world, they were too lazy to leave. The emperors had already started to build virtual estates and royal palaces in the Miracle Sacred City. It could be seen that they were prepared to move their offices from the real world to the Miracle Continent in the future. The estates on the Miracle Continent were an important source of income. The sacred city was very big, and the various luxurious palaces and residences could attract the desire of the emperors and normal people. It would be another high source of income for the Miracle Continent in the future. Chu Tian was filled with confidence in the Miracle Continent. The super smart brain Zero reminded Chu Tian, "Sir City Lord, the materials you ordered have all been bought. Do you need to use them now? You bought them this quickly." Chu Tian was very surprised because the materials he ordered were not normal materials. It had only been this long and they had all been bought. This kind of speed was very shocking. "Send them all to my laboratory's space warehouse. I need to use them now." Chu Tian came to his personal laboratory and opened the space warehouse, taking out all the materials. More than 10 supreme-grade medicinal herbs were placed in all kinds of exquisite immortal jade boxes and laid out. Any one of these materials was enough to make countless Heaven Domain realm experts fight over them, but now Miracle Commerce had sent them over millions of miles from every corner of the world in just 2 short days. This was Miracle Commerce's current strength. This was Miracle Commerce's current influence. The little fox was like a cat that smelled fish, immediately revealing a greedy expression that wanted to steal a bite. Go die to the side. Don't think that I don't know that you've just earned a large amount on the Miracle Continent. If you add in the materials you stole from the Miracle Gardens and other places, you should be worth at least 500 million source stones. If you steal a single immortal herb from me, I'll freeze your account and confiscate all your things. The little fox was so angry that its fur was about to explode. That was earned by this fox with my own strength. What right do you have to do this? Even if I steal things from the garden and the warehouse, it was stolen by this fox with my own strength. Chu Tian waved his hand at the indignant fox and said, all right, I'm going to refine pills. This alchemy is very important, so go play on the side and don't disturb me. The little fox was filled with indignation. This fox had gone through life and death with you for so long, you actually didn't give this fox any face. The little fox directly left in a fit of anger. Now that the little fox had tasted the sweetness, she was prepared to take a stroll in Miracle City. Wasn't it easy to earn money with one's own strength? The little fox decided to personally start a business on the Miracle Continent. Chu Tian sent the little fox away and he began to gather his spiritual energy and divine sense. With a gentle wave of his left hand, the ancient bronze cauldron floated into the air. Chu Tian infused his divine sense into the ancient cauldron and saw the source energy array lines on it light up. Chu Tian raised his hands high up and with a loud roar, spirit energy surged out of his body. The auxiliary refining equipment in the laboratory also released spirit energy. Several kinds of energy were released at the same time. The ancient cauldron's source energy alchemy array began to show its effects. Chu Tian's personal strength was not weak and Miracle City's laboratory could provide an endless supply of pure spirit energy. This spirit energy was directly extracted from source stones, so it was as pure as a human's. Chu Tian's spirit energy was mainly used as a guide in this process. The divine herb from the moon god's palace was taken out. A small piece was taken out and he placed it into the cauldron to be refined. After 7 days and 7 nights, the cauldron released a dazzling glow. A pill was born from it. It was like the rising sun, giving off a dazzling light. Chu Tian did not waste any time. It was hard to find a material to seal this pill even in Miracle City, and if it was left here for too long, the medicinal energy would be lost. Even if a little bit of this divine pill was lost, it would be a large loss. Chu Tian picked up the pill and swallowed it. Then, he sat cross-legged and started cultivating. The vast spiritual energy in his body flowed like a sea. He had been stuck in the first heaven domain layer for a long time and Chu Tian hadn't made no progress in this period of time. Miracle Commerce had such a strong advantage in resources and production, so each high-level member of the company ate pills as snacks. Chu Tian was not an exception, he had to swallow an immortal pill every day to increase his cultivation. Accumulating like this without immediately breaking through made the foundation in Chu Tian's body become more and more solid. This elixir had undoubtedly detonated the sea of elemental energy in his body. Spiritual energy instantly permeated every part of his body and was refined in his meridians. Finally, it turned into pure and primitive elemental energy, making him feel as if every meridian was filled with elemental energy like a raging river. There was no suspense at all. Chu Tian directly broke through a layer. This was just the beginning because most of the spirit energy in his body hadn't been refined yet. Especially the divinity contained in the pill, this was something that was rarely seen in pills before. When Chu Tiankai's spirit energy was fully absorbed, he very quickly reached a bottleneck, and in the end, smoothly broke through another layer of cultivation. He was in the 3rd heaven domain layer. Chu Tian's cultivation was still lacking compared to the emperor's, but with his methods and abilities, even if the emperors wanted to deal with him, it wouldn't be easy. He now had the ability to fight against the giants of the Alliance, so he was one of the peak experts on the continent. Chapter 647. Chu Tian spent an entire 10 days to break through and then spent another 10 days to consolidate his cultivation. After he finished, Chu Tian wasn't in a rush to leave the laboratory. He stayed in the laboratory for a while and no one knew what he was doing during this time. When Chu Tian finally came out of the laboratory, it was because of Meng Qinggu contacting him. Meng Qinggu had contacted Chu Tian. The Big Dry Empire's work had already made a breakthrough. It can't be. It can't be this fast. Chu Tian knew that the young Miss efficiency wasn't low, but it had only been a month. How could she have made this kind of breakthrough? Normally speaking, a month wasn't enough to walk through the entire Big Dry Empire. Chu Tian communicated with the young miss in order to understand the situation. Meng Qinggu described the entire matter in detail in the spiritual space. Meng Qinggu wasn't going to the Deqian Empire alone. Instead, she was leading a team of a few hundred diplomatic officials. Meng Qinggu didn't need to go through the trouble of running all over the Deqian Empire. Her job was mainly to oversee the central government and make arrangements. Most of the actual operations were done by her subordinates. When Miracle City's team arrived at the Big Dry Empire, the Big Dry Empire was already in a chaotic state. This was because the Big Dry Empire had suffered another defeat and this defeat was even worse than the previous ones. The entire empire was covered in a layer of dark clouds. Their status as a large country had disappeared. The most direct impact was the diplomatic relations maintained by the country's prestige. The Big Dry Empire's subordinate countries had already decided to stop paying tribute to the Big Dry Empire under the incitement of all sides. Some of them even betrayed the Big Dry Empire to become independent or join other powers. This caused the Big Dry Empire to suffer an unprecedented loss because an empire had at least several warring kingdoms attached to it and there were hundreds of small and large countries. The large countries relied on the protection fees and tributes of the small countries to earn large profits, which was a large part of the country's income. After the Big Dry Empire experienced two large defeats and the Big Dry Emperor being captured, the Big Dry Empire's citizens' confidence had greatly decreased. Even the nobles were very pessimistic about the Big Dry Empire's future. Not only was Miracle City becoming stronger, its development speed could be described as 1,000 miles a day, creating a new world almost every day. In this kind of situation, what could they use to protect the small countries? The Big Dry Empire had such a large grudge with Miracle City, it was already a problem if they could protect themselves. The Deqian Empire was definitely not in the mood to manage these small countries. Moreover, because of the possibility of a bigger war breaking out, it was very likely that the vassal countries would increase protection fees and tribute in the future. It would be strange if these small countries did not choose to defect. The Big Dry Empire couldn't destroy the Forest Alliance even at its peak, so it was even more impossible now or in the future. The only allies they could rope in were the Highland Alliance and the Howling Sky Empire, but now they had broken off relations with the Big Dry Empire because of the defeat of the Allied army. These two empire powers followed the trend and like the other empire-level powers of the continent, they took the initiative to establish relations with Miracle City. This filled the Big Dry Empire with fear. Now among the empire-level powers of the continent, other than a few secluded existences that had secluded themselves for thousands of years, as long as they weren't a part of the secular world, they were all working with Miracle City. The Big Dry Empire could be said to be an orphan of the world. Miracle City's status was rising and Miracle Commerce's technology and products kept coming out, allowing every country on the continent to embrace the new era and develop quickly. Only the Big Dry Empire maintained its original style. It was because Miracle City's status was becoming higher and higher on the continent that the Big Dry Empire's power was declining. This was because everyone knew that the Big Dry Empire and Miracle City were enemies. Now that they were fighting for technology, no one wanted to fall behind. No matter how big or small the countries were, they all cut off their relationship with the Big Dry Empire. There were even quite a few that became enemies with the Big Dry Empire in order to curry favor with Miracle City. This background was fully used by Meng Qinggu. Meng Qinggu first met the leaders of the Highland Alliance and the Howling Sky Empire through a spiritual conference on the way to the Big Dry Empire, finally turning hostility into friendship with the two empires. Miracle Commerce would use very generous conditions to build transport, logistics, and communication systems for the two empires. The two empires would use the conditions to put pressure on the Big Dry Empire. Miracle City not only had the support of the six empires now, even the Highland Alliance and the Howling Sky Empire were standing on Miracle City's side. From the western continent to the central continent, Miracle City didn't have any power that could oppose them. The surrounding countries rebelling against the Big Dry Empire was actually related to Meng Qinggu's actions behind the scenes. The emperor was captured, the subordinate countries rebelled, and there were internal and external troubles. They were in imminent danger. Meng Qinggu finally entered the Big Dry Empire at this time, but she didn't directly meet with the high-level members of the Big Dry Empire. Rather, she used various methods and channels, spending hundreds of millions of source stones to buy out all the media channels in the Big Dry Empire. The Big Dry Empire's media was very traditional, mainly using newspapers and letters to send information. This kind of media was very different, so it was impossible for it to be controlled by the central government. The various states of the Big Dry Empire all published shocking news, which was openly and secretly criticizing the Big Dry Emperor and the high-level members of the Big Dry Empire. There were half-truths and half-lies mixed in with all kinds of discrediting information, making the middle and lower-class people think that the Big Dry Empire's current situation was purely because of the Big Dry Emperor and the high-level members' ambition and arrogance. The main culprits for the Big Dry Empire losing over 1 million soldiers were the people in power in the court. Miracle City was purely playing the role of an innocent person in this matter. Other than that, they lost this chance to announce the changes Miracle City's technology had brought to the continent, as well as the consequences of the Big Dry Empire's seclusion. This made countless people understand and yearn for Miracle City's technology and products. It had to be said. Meng Qinggu's move was very good. The main conflict between Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire came from several large battles. Not only did these battles cause large amounts of casualties to the Big Dry Empire, it also caused the Big Dry Empire's national power and influence to decline. Therefore, the Big Dry Empire's citizens hated Miracle City to the bone. The Big Dry Empire's high level invited them to negotiate. They were all rejected by Meng Qinggu. On one hand, she was dragging it out, wearing down their spirit. On the other hand, she was using external pressure and internal persuasion to control the situation from top to bottom. She had already obtained very good results. Now that Meng Qinggu felt the time was ripe, she began to negotiate with the largest families and nobles of the Big Dry Empire. Meng Qinggu's current strategy was very simple. If she could persuade, she would persuade. If she could lure, she would lure. If that didn't work, she would threaten. If that didn't work, she would fight or even assassinate them. The Big Dry Empire was like a group of dragons without a leader. The Big Dry Emperor wasn't here and there was no one to support him. The entire empire's public opinion was turbulent, the subordinate countries were in pieces, and there was even more external pressure. In this kind of situation, with Meng Qinggu's outstanding mediating methods, she was confident that she could take care of the Big Dry Empire's high level in a month. Meng Qinggu said, "I mainly need two things right now. The first is source stones. I need enough source stones to bribe the high-level members. The second is to take care of the Big Dry Emperor as soon as possible. As long as the Big Dry Emperor agrees to our request and has the strongest Emperor clan side with us, it would be considered a success. Use Miracle City's source stones however you want, whether it's 2 billion or 3 billion, even if it's 10 billion, it's worth it. If you don't have enough source stones, you can borrow from other powers. If you don't have enough, you can sell our resources. As long as we can take down the Big Dry Empire, no matter how much we spend, it won't be too expensive." Chu Tian gave Meng Qinggu his absolute support. "You don't need to worry about the Big Dry Emperor, I have ways to subdue him." Meng Qinggu nodded, "All right, since it's like this, then we'll hurry." After Chu Tian exited the communication channel, he calculated the time. The big dry emperor had been in the spiritual cage for 30 days and he had been in the little spiritual world for around 25 years. 25 years. That little room. No matter how strong a person's temperament was, they wouldn't be able to endure 25 years of boredom. No matter how bad a person's temperament was, they should have calmed down after 25 years of solitude. Chu Tian felt it was about time, so he came to the dungeon and decided to see the big dry emperor. From the outside, the big dry emperor didn't seem to have changed at all. After all, only 30 days had passed in the real world. Chu Tian waved his hand at the undead sages guarding this place and the undead sages came forward to open the big dry emperor's helmet. Ah! The big dry emperor suddenly returned to the real world. He looked at the familiar and strange environment around him with a blank expression and then looked at the familiar and strange person in front of him with a blank expression. He had wanted to tear this fellow to pieces countless times, but now that this person had appeared in front of him, he didn't feel that overflowing anger and hatred, there was only helplessness and weakness. In these 25 years of living in the spiritual cage, the big dry emperor had gone crazy and cursed, but he had finally calmed down. He began to think about his life and he began to think about why he had fallen to this state. He began to realize that going against Miracle City was a mistake from the beginning. Chu Tian looked at the big dry emperor with a smile and said, "Your Majesty, we haven't seen each other for 30 days and you seem much calmer. It seems like this helmet is quite useful to you." The big dry emperor said through gritted teeth, "What do you want? Let me out." Chu Tian shook his head, "What do you think I'm lacking? I have money, I have territory, I have status, and now I even have a wife. Do you think you have anything to exchange for your freedom? I'll tell you the truth, I've recently invented an upgraded spiritual helmet. It can slow down the flow of time in the spiritual world to 1% and when you are locked in the spiritual cage, you will lose your sense of touch, hearing, sight, and movement, only your thoughts will remain. Like this, you will spend the next several hundred years or even several thousand years in remorse and pain." The big dry emperor began to feel fear. Although he was an emperor, he shouldn't be afraid of anything. But that bastard Chu Tian was just too terrifying, the torture tools he invented surpassed any kind of punishment in time. Even if it was a person with a firm will, they wouldn't be able to maintain their rationality under this kind of terrifying punishment. Chu Tian counted with his fingers and said, "I'll consider the big dry emperor's lifespan to be 1,000 years. Even if you have 500 years left, if you are locked in here for 500 years and you wear the helmet, then 500 times 500, you will stay in the spiritual cage for 250,000 years. Oh, this really is a shocking number, it's even longer than the ancient civilization of the continent. I think it's enough for you to see through all the mysteries of life from ancient times to now." "Stop!" The big dry emperor lowered his proud head like a blade of grass hit by frost. "What do you want? Just say it." Chu Tian said with a smile, "I don't understand the big dry emperor's meaning." The big dry emperor weakly said, "I'll agree to whatever request you have. In exchange for my freedom." Chu Tian thought about it and said, "This is what the big dry emperor said, so I won't be polite. I want to cooperate with your country, more accurately it's a fusion." He explained the Federation's plan to the big dry emperor. After the Federation is formed, you can still sit on the throne of the emperor, possessing most of the administrative power and a small part of the military. But most of the administrative power and the military will be controlled by Miracle City. Only like this can we unite and create an unrivaled giant that can dominate the continent. The big dry emperor's expression changed. He already knew that Chu Tian's conditions wouldn't be simple, he was even prepared to hand over the entire Big Dry Empire's treasury in exchange for his freedom. But the Big Dry Emperor never thought that what Chu Tian wanted wasn't the billions of source stones stored in the treasury over the past 10,000 years, but rather the entire Big Dry Empire. The Big Dry Emperor flew into a rage out of shame. "Chu Tian, don't go too far. The Big Dry Empire was built with the blood of previous emperors, do you think you can swallow the entire Big Dry Empire with just a single battle? What are you saying? I haven't swallowed the Big Dry Empire. The Big Dry Empire is still the Big Dry Empire. The Big Dry Emperor is still the Big Dry Emperor. The citizens are still citizens. Nothing has changed. We are only discussing a more scientific and perfect power structure. After we perfectly merge, I will focus all my attention on Miracle Commerce's technology and products, letting the billions of citizens of the Big Dry Empire obtain unprecedented wealth and power. What's wrong with this? What I sacrifice is just a part of the benefits of those in power. Wishful thinking. It doesn't matter if you don't agree because you still have time. An entire 250,000 years, I think it's enough for you to think about this problem. Other than that, I want to remind you that the Big Dry Empire is on the verge of collapse. All the subordinate countries have already left control and stopped paying tribute. The Highland Alliance and the Howling Sky Empire have already become Miracle City's allies and are planning to invade the Big Dry Empire. What about the Big Dry Empire? That is truly a mess. Over 500 million citizens are rebelling against the empire and over 15 families are leading their cities to separate from the empire to form a kingdom. The royal families have already been pushed aside and all the high-level members are fighting for the imperial palace. No one cares about your life or death. I'll say this much. Chu Tian snapped his fingers twice. Someone, put the new helmet on the Big Dry Emperor. We'll meet again after 2,000 years. The undead sages were about to put the new helmet on the Big Dry Emperor. Slow. The Big Dry Emperor was filled with despair as he said in a dejected voice, even if I agree to your request. It's impossible for everyone to agree. This is our job, we will naturally take care of it. Alright, I agree. Chapter 648. It was impossible to know what the Big Dry Emperor was feeling when he made this decision. But it could be said that the Big Dry Emperor had no choice but to grit his teeth to make this decision. But the Big Dry Emperor had no other choice. After all, Chu Tian was just too ruthless. If the Big Dry Emperor didn't agree, he would be imprisoned for 250,000 years in a cruel and painful manner. 250,000 years. The Big Dry Emperor would rather suffer all the cruel punishments in the world than spend 250,000 years in silence, darkness, and loneliness. Not to mention the 250,000 years of spiritual imprisonment in the upgraded spiritual helmet. Even the 25 years of being alone in the spiritual helmet was enough to make him feel like a lifetime had passed. His mentality, thoughts, and spirit had all undergone large changes. Chu Tian crossed his arms across his chest and looked at the Big Dry Emperor with a suspicious gaze. How can I believe you? What if you're just brushing me off and you don't recognize me after a while? Then I'll be treated like a fool. The Big Dry Emperor knew that Chu Tian definitely had a backup plan, so he said with a tired expression, "What do you want? Don't waste time, take it all out." Alright, alright, alright. Since the Big Dry Emperor says this, then I won't be polite. Chu Tian took out several pills and added a spiritual contract. These pills are all thought-sensing poisons. After they are ingested, they will immediately go into hibernation and even the highest-level alchemist won't be able to find any problems. This poison will change according to your thoughts. As long as you have thoughts of breaking your promise and take action, they will immediately release and swallow you. Other than that, this spiritual contract is just in case. Both pills and spiritual insurance. He wouldn't be afraid of the Big Dry Emperor betraying him like this. The Big Dry Emperor knew that he couldn't pass this pass no matter what. Any struggle would be futile, so he might as well happily accept it. He swallowed the poison pills that Chu Tian had carefully refined and then signed a spiritual contract. He released a portion of his spirit and sealed it into the contract. Very good, very good. Chu Tian was very satisfied with this result because whether they could swallow the Big Dry Empire or not, at least they had the Big Dry Emperor in their hands. As long as they had the Big Dry Emperor in their hands, the Big Dry Empire would never be enemies with the Forest Alliance. Whether it was advancing or retreating, Miracle City was invincible. Chu Tian reported the good news to his mistress in the Deqian Empire. The young miss never thought that Chu Tian would be able to deal with the Big Dry Emperor so easily. This big dry emperor was one of the emperors of the continent. Making him submit to Miracle City, Meng Qinggu thought it was much harder than taking care of the big dry empire's mob. However, as the saying goes, strengths and weaknesses complement each other. What Chu Tian found difficult to do, Meng Qinggu could do, and what Meng Qinggu found difficult to do, Chu Tian could easily do. With the two of them working together, how could the great Qian Empire not be wiped out? After the big dry emperor gave in, he was released from prison by Chu Tian. From now on, the big dry emperor had temporarily regained his freedom. Chu Tian not only wanted to use methods to make him submit, he also wanted to make him realize his failure in his mind and spirit. During this time, the big dry emperor could freely move around the Forest Alliance's territory. He could take a good look at Miracle City's technology, and Chu Tian even gave him a miracle helmet. After the big dry emperor saw these things, he deeply understood just how strong Miracle City was. He deeply understood just how big the gap between the big dry empire and Miracle City was. The big dry empire couldn't defeat Miracle City before, so there was no hope now. So other than submitting, they had no other choice. Submitting could at least be exchanged for wealth and prosperity. If they resisted, there would only be death and destruction. Like this, another half a month passed. Meng Qinggu suddenly commanded Chu Tian. His work in the big dry empire was pretty much done, so he had Chu Tian bring the big dry emperor back to the big dry empire. Without another word, Chu Tian called the 4 leaders of the alliance and formed a group of envoys to escort the big dry emperor back to the big dry empire. Both sides held a welcoming ceremony and a negotiation ceremony. In the eyes of the other powers that didn't know the truth, it was just some kind of agreement between Miracle City and the big dry empire. In the end, Miracle City agreed to send the big dry emperor back to the big dry empire. The big dry empire would most likely pay a large amount of compensation, ceding territory, and other things, but Miracle City was still Miracle City and the big dry empire was still the big dry empire. This was a fact that would never change. This was an international convention. After all, an emperor couldn't be killed just like that. Right now everyone's focus was on the Miracle Continent and Miracle City's new technology. There was news on this side, but the media controlled by Miracle City didn't report much, so no one cared about the situation on this side. Another half a month passed peacefully like this. Meng Qinggu and Chu Tian often appeared on the Miracle Continent, and the big dry emperor became a frequent visitor of the Miracle Continent. Everyone thought that the two sides had turned hostility into friendship. As for what kind of compensation Miracle City and the big dry empire had reached, everyone tried to inquire about it, but the feedback they received was different. But this didn't seem like anything worth paying attention to. The big dry empire was very far from the Forest Alliance, and there were many medium-sized and small-sized countries in between, so it was impossible for the big dry empire to cede territory. At most they would just pay compensation. But Miracle City didn't lack money at all. Even if they had another 12 billion source stones, it was just icing on the cake for Miracle City. Who would have thought that at this time? A piece of news that would shake the entire continent would be spread. Chu Tian, the big dry emperor, the 6 leaders of the alliance, the sea race's representative, and the underground representative, these people gathered in Miracle City and released a shocking piece of news to the entire continent. They were prepared to form a Miracle Federation. This Miracle Federation would be the first federation on the continent, and Miracle City would be the capital of this country. The federation would be divided into 300 states, and there would only be one leader. This leader would be chosen by the federation's parliament. When this news came out, the entire continent was in an uproar. Even in their dreams, they never would have thought that the plot would go in this direction. Actually, Chu Tian forming a new empire-level power in the alliance area was already expected by everyone, so everyone was already prepared for this. Although there was another power on the same level as them on the continent, this wasn't a binding matter for them. However, Miracle City's status and influence had already been accepted by everyone, so this result was understandable. Now it was different. The Big Dry Empire announced that they would join the Miracle Federation. Perhaps no one didn't understand what this news meant. If Miracle City's alliance could form an empire-level power, with the addition of the Big Dry Empire, it wouldn't be as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. The result of this alliance was that Miracle City would become a giant that ruled the entire western continent, becoming a super empire that surpassed any empire-level power on the continent. Miracle City's alliance area, the Big Dry Empire's area, and the Western Sea, they all had the potential to become an empire. Once the three of them joined together, the hundreds of small and medium-sized kingdoms would definitely submit. This was equivalent to at least 4-5 empires tying their resources together. No one on the continent could compare to the Miracle Federation. The rulers of the continent were all panicking this time. This was because Miracle City's ambition had truly shocked them. Now the entire continent was enjoying the benefits of Miracle City's technology, and their relationship with Miracle City was in a honeymoon period. Who would have thought that Miracle City would suddenly make this move, making every power feel a large amount of pressure? What attitude should they use to face Miracle City? This was the most painful and difficult choice of the century. There were several empire-level powers that jumped out to criticize Miracle City's methods. They thought that Miracle City wanted to be a dictator and they wanted to rule the entire world, so they called for the other empires to join together and stop Miracle City's ambitions from spreading. This kind of worry quickly spread across the continent. People were worried that Miracle City would become too big for them to handle in the end. Because at that time, there wouldn't be any power on the continent that could resist the Miracle Federation. Although there were many empires that responded, there were even more empires that were hesitant. Especially the 6 empire-level powers that had a close relationship with Miracle City. Although it was hard for them to accept Miracle City's methods, they could feel how strong Miracle City was. Once Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire merged, their position in the Western Sea couldn't be shaken at all. Even if the entire continent attacked Miracle City, they could at least protect themselves. This would inevitably develop into a long war that would last for several decades or even 100 years. Once they started a war with Miracle City, outer space's underground ruins, transportation, and communication, these things would all be cut off. Meng Qingguo saw that the continent's situation had suddenly become serious, but she didn't panic because these rulers' reactions were within her expectations. For such a large matter, if these rulers happily accepted it and didn't raise any objections, it would be strange. Meng Qingguo sent out invitations to all the ruler-level powers on the continent. Miracle City was prepared to hold an Empire Summit, and this summit would invite all the rulers of the continent, letting everyone gather to discuss this matter. Meng Qingguo knew that although they had taken care of the Big Dry Emperor and the Big Dry Empire, if they didn't shut up the people of the outside world, the Miracle Federation would never be established. This conference was very important. It would even affect the future of the world. Chapter 649. The topic of this Empire Summit was Continent Peace Conference. This conference was proposed by Miracle City, and the location was still the Miracle Royal Palace. Ever since the Miracle Royal Palace was built, it had become the top meeting place on the Miracle Continent. There were a total of 22 empire-level powers on the continent, and 3 of them were special groups that didn't care about worldly matters. Even with such a large matter happening on the continent, they still showed an indifferent attitude. Therefore, other than these 3, there were 19 powers participating in this conference. There was no doubt. This was an unprecedented super summit. Each participant was in existence at the peak of the continent. The topic this time was to discuss the establishment of the Miracle Federation and the future development of the continent. Each emperor-level character had serious expressions as they sat in the conference room. Whether their relationship with Miracle City was good or bad, there was not a single emperor that was willing to see Miracle City swallow the Big Dry Empire and become a superpower. Chu Tian, City Lord's thoughts have changed too quickly. Your wedding has yet to settle the storm on the continent, and now you want to establish some Miracle Federation. Us old fellows really can't keep up with your thoughts. The first to speak was the Dragon Lord from the Dragon Territory. However, as one of the 6 allied countries, the Dragon Territory had a good relationship with Miracle City, therefore the Dragon Lord didn't oppose Chu Tian right away. He just patiently said to Chu Tian, if it's just establishing the Miracle Federation, I think with Miracle City's current reputation, position, and fame, it would be acceptable. The problem now is that the area you've encircled is too large. That's right. The Wild Beast Empire's Wild Beast Emperor couldn't sit still. The Miracle Federation's territory is already larger than the average empire. If the Big Dry Empire is included, it will instantly occupy half of the western continent and the entire Western Sea. At that time, perhaps even 3 to 5 empires added together wouldn't be able to compare to the Miracle Federation. The Burning Heaven Emperor said, I ask the City Lord to think twice before acting. After all, your actions will damage the relationship with the countries of the continent and will damage Miracle City's image on the continent. I say, why are you being so polite with him? An emperor expressed his stance in front of everyone. He was filled with rage as he released a powerful and dignified aura. Each recognized empire on the continent has a long history of over 10,000 years. If your Miracle City rashly swallows one, I think it will cause chaos in the region. It will spread to the entire continent and become the fuse that will cause chaos on the continent. I can't allow this matter to happen. Exactly. Another emperor stood up and said, the continent has reached a balance. This stable situation has lasted for thousands of years. Although there are occasional conflicts between the empires, there has never been a war that could destroy a country. Miracle City wants to swallow the Big Dry Empire. Isn't this breaking the balance of power? Objection. Objection. This kind of thing must not happen. Chu Tian and Meng Qingwu did not speak, but the whole meeting room was filled with objections. However, this phenomenon was also expected, so the two of them were not surprised by their behavior. They just calmly waited for them to finish speaking. My attitude is very simple. Chu Tian sat calmly in his seat. He was no longer a nobody. Even in the face of these emperors, he would not lose his composure or avoid them. Let's be frank today. I have invited everyone here to discuss how to solve this problem, not to let everyone stop us. Chu Tian, what do you mean by this? You still don't understand? Chu Tian gently snapped his fingers. Miracle City's position is very firm. Whether you agree or not, we will not waver on this matter. The Miracle Federation must be established. This is already an established fact and no one can stop it from happening. We are here today to discuss a peace agreement based on this established fact, exploring the development of the continent in the next 100 or even 1,000 years, establishing a pattern of common prosperity and development. Everyone looked at each other in blank dismay. The emperors were already beginning to feel angry. This arrogant brat simply did not place them in his eyes at all. The people here were all famous for hundreds or even thousands of years. This brat Chu Tian had just risen on the continent for less than 2 years, yet he dared to not place them in his eyes at all. This was a very vile behavior. Chu Tian did not place them in his eyes at all, so he continued, the Miracle Federation's establishment is already a trend, it cannot be stopped by any opposing voices. Miracle City has the strongest technology on the continent and the Big Dry Empire is the strongest empire on the Western Sea. Once our two powers merge to form the Miracle Federation, we will immediately become the strongest power on the Western continent. I might as well say something offensive. At that time, even if everyone works together, they might not be able to defeat us. Everyone's expressions changed. This fellow was just too arrogant. Was he declaring war on all the powers on the continent? Good Chu Tian, I never thought you would be this ambitious. It seems like there's nothing to talk about today. That's right, let's prepare for war. Our 19 powers, do you think we can't deal with your little Miracle Federation? No matter how arrogant you are, you shouldn't go too far. The emperors angrily wanted to leave. You all calm down and listen to what he has to say. A cold voice without any anger came over at this time. The one who spoke this time was the Netherworld Sea's Nether King. The Nether King was one of the emperors with the most experience, but because he was an undead, no one knew how long he had lived for. Actually, out of all the emperors present, the Nether King was the one that didn't want to break off relations with Miracle City the most. The undead were said to be immortal and would never grow old. However, those who truly understood the undead would not think so. In fact, the undead could also perish. This was because once they were transformed into undead, all of their senses would cease to exist. Sight, hearing, touch, smell, and so on. In addition, all of their physiological functions would stop. They did not need to eat, reproduce, or sleep. The undead were like a ball of fire in a cage, they could only use a special method to sense the world. The longer this state lasted, the more their soul and mind would decline. The aging of the physical body could be maintained with medicine, but once the soul died, it was irreversible. With the recent birth of the Miracle Continent, large amounts of undead from the Netherworld Sea entered the Miracle Continent. These undead reconstructed their bodies on the Miracle Continent, and they could use biological methods to dissolve the world, which had a large effect on the aging of the undead. The undead were a race that had no desires. The Netherworld Sea was one of the most mysterious powers on the continent, so it was unknown what kind of terrifying background they had. The Netherworld Sea didn't want to participate in the chaotic battles of the continent because wealth and power had no meaning to them. Only by making them truly immortal could they display their greatest value. The emperors that wanted to leave hesitated a bit. The biggest problem now was the attitude of the 6 empires in the Miracle City Alliance. The Netherworld Sea had the deepest background and history among the 6 empires in the Miracle City Alliance. If the Netherworld Sea chose to stand on the side of the Miracle Federation, there was no hope of overthrowing the Miracle Federation at all. If everyone thought about it, Chu Tian's words were a bit arrogant, but it wasn't the truth. Miracle City had developed to this step today, they were no longer existences that could be casually destroyed. The continent's transportation, logistics, and communication systems were all created by Miracle City. This also meant that if they became enemies with Miracle City only needed to cut off these things and they would quickly return to their previous state. Not to mention attacking Miracle City at that time. The Empire's armies would cross the continent and it wouldn't even take a year or 2 for them to gather. Miracle City's powerful transportation technology, especially the space gate, as well as the deep space weapons that appeared not long ago, they had the ability to destroy the continent's armies before they gathered. If the continent's armies gathered together, could they defeat the Miracle Federation? This was too difficult. Miracle City's technology was too far ahead of the continent. Every year was a whole new world, therefore there were too many uncertainties. When the Big Dry Empire attacked Miracle City was just a power that was a bit weaker than a normal warring kingdom. Who would have thought that the Big Dry Empire would be the losing side? History always had a pattern. Now that the continent's countries were working together to deal with the Miracle Federation, of course it looked like the Miracle Federation had no chance of winning, but who knew the result when they really fought? Once this kind of battle started, it would be very hard to stop. The Miracle Alliance was surrounded by over 20 powers. Even if they couldn't hold on and Miracle City was about to fall, Miracle City could retreat to the Western Sea, underground, or outer space. This way, they wouldn't be able to chase them no matter what, after all they didn't have the necessary technology. If they couldn't wipe out Miracle City in one go, this power would come back sooner or later and they would become the continent's nightmare. In today's meeting, they had to continue even if they didn't want to. If they couldn't come up with a satisfactory result, the continent would welcome an unprecedented calamity. Chapter 650. Everyone's attitude was within his expectations. This included the Nether King and the other undead representatives. The reason why Chu Tian dared to be this fearless was because the Miracle Federation had the confidence to dominate an area. Secondly, although the 19 powers were very strong, it wasn't an easy matter for them to work together. It was because they were too strong. It would be hard for them to cooperate sincerely like this. If the empires worked together, Miracle City wouldn't even need to make a move. There would be internal conflicts between the various races and countries because of the inequalities. Frankly speaking, even if they worked together, they would still be a motley crew. Without several years, they wouldn't be able to work together. Now they could have a proper discussion. Concerning the Miracle Federation, I think I should be the one to speak. Meng Qinggu knew that Chu Tian didn't care about the consequences when he spoke. If he was the one to speak, he might cause some trouble, therefore Meng Qinggu personally explained the Miracle Federation's plan. Concerning the establishment of the Miracle Federation, everyone can't just look at the increase in strength, they should also look at our essence. The Burning Heaven Emperor asked, "What is your essence?" No matter how it changes, from Miracle City to the Forest Alliance, to the Miracle Federation, our essence has never changed and our essence is miracle commerce. Meng Qinggu slowly said, "We have strong technology as our backing, we have a foothold in business, we develop in business, and we build a country in business, so in the end, we are still a company. Then in terms of our roots, we are just merchants and not ambitious people. Dominating the continent has no meaning for us, we are more inclined to do business with the continent and let the entire continent enjoy Miracle Commerce's products and technology, this is our core. War is the result of political games and competing for benefits. Miracle Commerce is different from the other countries, our core interest is not in war, but in peace, therefore we have no reason to dominate the world. This is because we can rely on our current technology to develop our business to the peak, so in terms of essence, Miracle Commerce is not aggressive. As long as the world is prosperous and we have relations with other countries, we can become the true winners." Everyone knit their brows. Although these words were reasonable. But it was too difficult to convince these people. From the few years that Miracle Commerce has appeared on the continent, we have never occupied a single inch of land. We have always used cooperation and openness as our main method, the Miracle Federation still believes in this. Meng Qinggu said this and then added, "The times are different now. Everyone can see that Miracle City has begun to spread across the continent. The technology we control is becoming more and more precious and powerful, but our overall strength can't compare to anyone here. The continent's situation is very stable now, so we can barely hold our current position. This is the so-called unpredictable winds and clouds in the sky. If there is a large-scale war, Miracle City will be the first to be fought over by the various countries. Do you think we can be at ease?" Meng Qinggu said solemnly, "Miracle City's technology stands at the pinnacle of this world, but we don't have the corresponding power to protect this technology." It was like a frail child guarding a huge vault, surrounded by a group of strong men. The instability and hidden dangers of such an existence were far greater than the rise of a superpower. We had no choice but to use this method to increase our confidence. Now that the continent is becoming one, we are bound together for good or bad. I hope that war will never happen. Miracle City's technology was indeed too attractive. If they fell out with Miracle City now, both sides would suffer losses. No one would gain any benefits from this matter. The Wind Moon Empress couldn't help saying, "Then what are you prepared to do? Since you invited us here, you must have already thought of a solution." The Wind Moon Empress was one of the most difficult emperors. This reason was very laughable. These emperors were addicted to playing on the Miracle Continent and there were many interesting inventions from Miracle City. These empires were the first to benefit from it compared to the other empires on the continent. Therefore they were the most affected and now they had to suddenly break off relations with Miracle City. This was a very difficult choice. It really was a very difficult choice. For today's meeting, we are only the organizers. We hope to form an alliance between the 19 of you. Meng Qinggu didn't beat around the bush. At the same time, we hope to gather the strength of the 19 countries to create a joint council that will protect peace and prosperity on the continent. Meng Qinggu continued to add, "The Miracle Federation is willing to promise that they will forever remain neutral, not roping in any power, and accept the joint council's supervision. No matter what happens on the continent, they will not use any force to invade a city or land. If they violate the contract, they will be attacked by the entire world." This contract placed the Miracle Federation on the opposite side of all the powers on the continent. If the Miracle Federation made any movements, the entire world would join together to deal with the Miracle Federation. An emperor said, "The Miracle Federation is developing very quickly, who knows what the future will be like. We might have a chance of winning now, but what about in 10 or 100 years? This is another important bargaining chip that we have to propose today." Meng Qinggu had already thought of this relationship. Miracle Commerce will lift the ban on all goods from today onwards. We can build transport gates on the continent for free, which will be managed by the Joint Council. Other than that, we will sell 50% of Miracle City's high-end weapons, from the warships to the deep space weapons. We will allow Miracle City's weapons to flow across the continent, increasing the continent's strength like this. This was a rather sincere condition. Actually, everyone understood in their hearts that Miracle City swallowing the Big Dry Empire was just completing their path of domination ahead of time. Otherwise, with Miracle City's current development, even if they didn't swallow the Big Dry Empire, as long as they formed the Miracle Federation and developed for 8-10 years, Miracle City could still become the overlord of the continent. This was a hard-to-change fact. Unless they destroyed the Miracle Federation before it matured, but was this easier said than done? The main difference between the Miracle Federation and the countries of the continent was in technology. If they couldn't make up for this difference in technology and weapons, the result would be the same even if the Miracle Federation didn't swallow the Big Dry Empire. Now that Miracle City had swallowed the Big Dry Empire as a condition, they were willing to sell half of their most advanced weapons. This was equal to giving the other countries of the continent the ability to make super weapons. This way, the continent's strength could be balanced. No matter how powerful the weapons are, they are still made by Miracle City, so it's hard for us to be assured. An emperor that opposed the Miracle Federation loosened a bit, but he threw out a new condition: it's not impossible for the Miracle Federation to be formed. We request that Miracle City release a portion of their technology. Yes. Before Meng Qinggu could say anything, Chu Tian directly answered for her: Miracle City can release their military technology. For example, the source energy machines, the mecha armors, and the warships. We can release all of these military technology. When he said this, everyone was shocked. Miracle Commerce was really willing to release the source energy weapons manufacturing technology. This was a very important piece of technology. If the people of the continent could make source energy weapons, the strength of the continent would increase by leaps and bounds. Everyone wouldn't be afraid of Miracle City like they were now. Meng Qinggu slightly knit her brows, but she quickly relaxed. They would release it then. Miracle City had spent 4 years to stabilize their technology, so the countries of the continent would need at least 5-8 years to understand it. Now Miracle Commerce controlled the main resource fields and resource channels of the continent, so they could create the most perfect production chain in this period of time. So what if the countries of the continent had the related technology? The talents, resources, and production chain were all controlled by Miracle City. If they wanted to make large warships, it wouldn't be enough without at least 10 years. Even if the other powers controlled Miracle City's technology, controlling this technology and developing it were two different things. They could only make source energy cannons and guided missiles in the first few years. It was impossible for them to make high-level products. Miracle City's high-level weapons, especially the large motherships, deep space weapons, and etc., were actually made from many fields of technology. Not only did it include the source energy weapons, it also included the energy field, the smart brain field, and etc. It was already not bad if these empire powers could make simple source energy cannons and guided missiles in the early stages. Miracle City's lead in equipment would not stop. But it also gave these powers a chance to resist. Chu Tian added another clause: we can release the secret information on the source energy weapons, but the continent's treaty will also be changed. After the Miracle Federation is formed, we will not expand and we will not take the initiative to annex any land outside of the Federation. This treaty didn't sound any different, but there was a big trick in it. Not taking the initiative didn't mean they wouldn't annex. This also meant that if a few small to medium-sized kingdoms wanted to join the Miracle Federation, they wouldn't touch the continent's treaty. This could be considered leaving a path of retreat for the Miracle Federation in the future. The empires discussed this for a while. The Wind Moon Empress, the Dark Night Elven King, the Nether King, the Dragon Elder, the Heaven Burning Emperor, and the Wild Beast Emperor, the 6 empires all expressed their agreement. This was because the 6 empires had been working with Miracle City for a long time. They had even supported and trained their own allies in the alliance. Therefore, compared to others, they were the beneficiaries, therefore they were more willing to accept this matter. Now that Miracle City was willing to release their military technology, the continent would be in a new balance in the future. The Miracle Federation's formation was already inevitable. Since they couldn't stop this matter from happening, they had to go with the flow and obtain as many benefits as possible from this matter. The 6 empire-level powers all agreed. What could the others do if they didn't agree? The people present weren't fools. No one wanted to see a power that surpassed all the empires on the continent, but the Miracle Federation was too powerful and they had the help of the 6 empires. Even if the other powers worked together, it would be hard for them to resist, so they could only agree in the end. Everyone spent several days discussing the details. Finally, the continent's treaty and the joint parliament were formed. This treaty was the first treaty signed by all the emperors on the continent. There were over 1,000 rules that firmly bound the continent, laying the foundation for the continent's development for the next 1,000 years. Chapter 651. After several days. This closed meeting was like announcing the final result to the continent. The 19 empires chose a normal kingdom in the center of the continent as the address and officially established the United Nations, led by the Joint Council. There were a total of 19 seats in the Joint Council. Each emperor sent their most trusted person as a council member. This council was responsible for maintaining the continent's peace. When there was an irreconcilable conflict between the countries of the continent, the Joint Council could ask the council to intervene. The council had the right to passively or actively intervene and conduct a fair trial. If a country didn't obey the trial, the council had the right to send a peacekeeping army to attack that country, and the other member countries had the duty to help the peacekeeping army. This joint council seemed like it was established to maintain the continent's peace, but its main goal was the Miracle Federation that was about to be born. This was because once the Miracle Federation revealed its wild nature, the Joint Council would summon the entire continent to fight against the Miracle Federation. Not only did Miracle City not have any objections to this, on the day the Joint Council was established, they gifted 5 warships, 100 fighter jets, 1,000 cannons, and tens of thousands of source energy weapons. Other than that, they provided money to build a space gate, 4 transport towers, and 500 transport scrolls for the Joint Council. These transport scrolls would be sent to the heads of the various countries. Other than that, they gave the Joint Council a large palace in the Miracle Continent's sacred city to work in the virtual world, so they could react to any sudden situation on the continent. No matter how civilized this world was, it was still about power. Without enough power, the establishment of the joint parliament would only be a figurehead. In the end, it would become a puppet or a useless organization in name. Large amounts of weapons were necessary. Transport towers, space gates, transport scrolls, communication devices, and virtual offices, they were all a complete set. The matter of Miracle City using the 6 Great Alliance countries to defeat the Big Dry Empire had already been spread across the continent. Everyone knew that Miracle City had invented a mysterious space gate that could quickly send an army to every corner of the continent. Whoever had this terrifying equipment in their hands would have the power to attack the entire continent. This was a very terrifying deterrent weapon. The Joint Council hadn't been established yet, but Miracle City had given them large amounts of precious weapons and equipment, and Miracle City had helped build the space gate. This already gave the Joint Council a large amount of power and authority. Miracle Commerce's assistance was necessary, but just relying on Miracle Commerce's support couldn't support a completely independent Joint Council. To be qualified to become a member of the Joint Parliament, the first condition was to be one of the top empires on the continent. Every member of the joint parliament would be able to mobilize a top-notch army of 100,000 soldiers from their own country, ultimately forming a super army of nearly 2 million soldiers in the joint parliament. In addition, every empire had to pay membership fees to the Allied Parliament every year. Miracle Commerce would support the United Nations in building various factories to form an industrial chain. However, before the United Nations could be self-sufficient, all of its deficit expenses would be paid by the empires equally. The greatest characteristic of the joint parliament was its neutrality. It had to be an absolutely neutral force. In the future, in order to ensure the neutrality of the joint parliament, an undead sage who had lived for 30,000 years would be selected from the Netherworld Sea to be the chairman of the parliament. Although this undead sage had incomparable wisdom and experience, he had basically lost his ability to act on his own. He could only rely on a set of mental spells to complete a task through hypnosis. With him in charge of the joint parliament, justice would be ensured. In the future, the empires could ask Miracle Commerce for help and create a special super smart brain for the joint parliament. With this super smart brain that didn't have any emotions as the chairman, the members of the parliament might be affected by the situation, but the smart brain wouldn't. The smart brain's high analysis and processing abilities allowed it to surpass the entire staff. This kind of joint parliament would undoubtedly have a large influence on the continent. With an army that could leave the empires and receive orders from the joint parliament, as well as a large amount of military equipment and resources, it would become the cornerstone of the continent's peace in the future. This was the greatest harvest from this conference. All aspects of preparation were in full swing. The Miracle Federation matter could not be dragged on any longer. Chu Tian and Meng Qinggu came to the Big Dry Empire to clean up the mess. After Meng Qinggu's constant intervention and adjustments, 90% of the citizens and nobles had already accepted the fact that they were a part of the Miracle Federation. But no matter how clever Meng Qinggu's methods were, there would always be people who opposed it. These people were led by the nobles who had lost their benefits. These nobles didn't agree with the Miracle Federation, and through inciting their armies and citizens, they finally formed a resistance force. As for these opposing forces, Chu Tian's method of dealing with them was very simple. If he could buy them, he would buy them. If he couldn't buy them, he would scare them. If he couldn't scare them, he would beat them. If they couldn't be beaten, he would kill them. Miracle City's fighter planes were all sent to the Big Dry Empire's territory, and their deep space weapons were all aimed at the Big Dry Empire. Even if a rebel army appeared anywhere, it couldn't be hidden from Miracle City's eyes. Miracle City's deep space weapons and fast troops could eliminate them with lightning-fast speed. After around half a month, the Big Dry Empire's opposing forces had all quieted down. Miracle City didn't just eliminate the opposing forces in this half a month, they also cooperated with both sides of the Big Dry Empire to build transport towers in the 36 states of the Big Dry Empire in just half a month. Other than that, they used Miracle City's newly developed Heaven's Net warships to cover the entire empire. In just a few short days, the Big Dry Empire that had never come into contact with advanced technology suddenly felt the convenience of technology. This was just the beginning. In the future, when the transport towers appeared and the space warehouse became more powerful, Miracle Commerce's products would pour into it. The Empire's citizens would know how beneficial it was to join the Miracle Federation. The situation was already over. The opposing forces had no choice but to submit. Chu Tian and Meng Qinggu smoothly pacified the Big Dry Empire. Almost at the same time, the continent's central joint parliament was formed. In order to show the legitimacy of the Miracle Federation and to boost the momentum of the new joint parliament, Chu Tian used his status as Miracle City's city lord to submit an application to the joint parliament to form a federation. The establishment of the Miracle Federation was already an internal matter. The reason why Chu Tian did this was mainly to find a legal province for the Miracle Federation. This was because the joint parliament was formed by the powers of the various empires. If the joint parliament approved it, it meant the entire continent approved it. Then the Miracle Federation would be legitimate and there wouldn't be anyone who dared point fingers at them in the future. The joint parliament needed a heavyweight like the Miracle Federation to establish their credibility. Even Miracle City, who was at its peak, needed to submit an application to the joint parliament if they wanted to form a federation. Then what other power would dare go around the joint parliament? Both sides took what they needed. Chu Tian submitted an application and the joint parliament accepted it. Finally, after the parliament analyzed it, they voted to establish the federation. The joint parliament planned out the effective area of the Miracle Federation, which included the Forest Alliance, the Kingdom Alliance, the Underground Alliance, the West Sea Alliance, and the Big Dry Empire, a total of 5 regions. Each region would have a local government that would have ordinary administrative and security powers. The most important military power would be managed by Miracle City. The joint parliament signed a contract with the Miracle Federation. After the Miracle Federation was established, it would never expand, never invade, and never build a fortress. Other than that, it wouldn't send out a large army to attack other countries, etc. This was announced to the world through the joint parliament and it would be notarized and supervised by the world. Meng Qingwu's mediation had a complete victory. The various empires couldn't do anything about the Miracle Federation at all. The Miracle Federation had appeared out of nowhere and its strength far surpassed any of the empires on the continent. It would become the #1 superpower on the continent. But the Miracle Federation couldn't be established just because they wanted to. This was because miracle commerce had only developed in the Forest of Chaos for a few years. Strictly speaking, miracle commerce hadn't even fully grasped the Forest of Chaos yet. Before the Miracle Federation was established, there were still many neutral cities in the Forest of Chaos. They couldn't even deal with a trivial Forest of Chaos and now they had to integrate 5 large regions. This was not something that could be done in a short period of time. But this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that the Miracle Federation had been established, but they didn't have a proper leader. This was because the Miracle Federation was different from any country on the continent. This was not an empire, so the title of ruler was not suitable. This was because the leader of the Federation needed to manage several large regions and countless states, therefore this supreme position was named President. The president election could not be inherited or directly appointed. In order to create the best start, although they knew there was no suspense in the result, Miracle City still launched a presidential election for the entire Miracle Federation. Chapter 652. The Miracle Federation's first presidential election was about to begin. The candidates for the first presidential election were all people from the Forest Alliance, including Miracle City's City Lord Chu Tian, the Vice City Lord Meng Qingwu, Vivian, the Production and Resource Minister, the City Lord's wife Meng Yingying, as well as the Eternal Forest's Lancelot, the Dragon Lord Nidhogg, the Kingdom Alliance's Alliance Master Chen Bingyu, and others. The Big Dry Empire was a defeated country and a newcomer, so no one had the qualifications to run for president yet. The Miracle Federation's president could only be chosen from these candidates. Actually, for this kind of election, there was no suspense at all. But in order to establish the Federation's model, they had to follow the rules. Although the Miracle Alliance's internal members didn't care. But within the Miracle Federation, this matter still caused a large wave of discussion and uproar. Luo Yulian was the eldest princess of the Big Dry Empire's #1 subsidiary kingdom, the Heavenly Dragon Warring Kingdom. Actually, before the Big Dry Empire and Miracle City came into conflict, she had been paying attention to Miracle City like everyone else. The Big Dry Empire suffered defeat after defeat, making Luo Yulian feel an indescribable fear towards Miracle City. She didn't understand why the large Big Dry Empire would be beaten by a small power that appeared out of nowhere. Especially after learning that the Big Dry Emperor had been captured alive, Luo Yulian completely lost confidence in the empire. The Big Dry Emperor's prestige in the Big Dry Empire was unmatched, and now that the Big Dry Emperor had been captured, what face did the Big Dry Empire have to stand on the continent? Luo Yulian's understanding of Miracle City deepened. She obtained all kinds of Miracle City's products through various channels, and it was these Miracle City products that allowed Luo Yulian to have a deeper understanding of Miracle City. She began to understand why Miracle City was victorious in the war. This kind of power filled with creativity, it was simply a new future for the continent. In the future, Luo Yulian would witness the Big Dry Empire's chaos. The news of the Big Dry Emperor being captured was sealed by the Big Dry Empire's high level, but for some unknown reason, probably because the paper couldn't contain the fire, the news spread across the empire like a plague and there were rumors everywhere. Some people said that the Big Dry Emperor's cultivation had been crippled and he was being tortured day and night in Miracle City. Some people said that the Big Dry Emperor had lost 2 million soldiers in this battle and he had to give up 100 cities. There were also rumors that the Deqian Empire was greatly weakened after this battle. More than a dozen loyal vassal states had cut off relations with the Deqian Empire, and several empires on the continent were working together to beat them when they were down. All kinds of rumors were flying everywhere, some were true and some were false, and it was difficult to distinguish them. In short, it made people panic. Merchants stopped doing business, and medicine farmers stopped cultivating. Many families were even preparing to move. Even the administrative system was paralyzed. Some people in the Heaven Dragon Warring Kingdom suggested leaving the Big Dry Empire, and Luo Yulian became a loyal supporter of this. The reason was very simple: the Big Dry Empire didn't have time to care about subordinate kingdoms. The Heavenly Dragon Empire used this chance to escape the Big Dry Empire's control and rely on Miracle City. Something that Luo Yulian never expected happened. The Heavenly Dragon Empire had left the Big Dry Empire's control and was prepared to rely on other powers, when an important piece of news was sent over. The Big Dry Empire announced that they would merge with Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire would become a country under Miracle City's control. This change was too fast and too shocking. Luo Yulian was very happy that the Big Dry Empire's Big Dry Emperor didn't participate in the presidential election. Otherwise, if the Big Dry Empire's Big Dry Emperor became the Federation's president, the Heavenly Dragon Warring Kingdom that betrayed the Big Dry Empire wouldn't have a good ending. The Miracle Federation's election was divided into local and central elections. The local regions had their own president and the central region had their own president. Of course, the local president was just the head of the local government and most of the power was concentrated in the central region. This meant that after tonight, the Big Dry Empire would no longer be a sovereign country. It made a respected empire submit to this kind of degree. How did Miracle City do this? Luo Yulian was shocked, but she felt this result was very good. Miracle City and the Big Dry Empire could work together. This would lead to the rise of a giant power on the western continent. A warring kingdom like the Heavenly Dragon Warring Kingdom could become independent from now on, becoming a part of the Federation. They wouldn't need to live under the Big Dry Empire anymore. The Federation's presidential election was about to begin. Miracle City sent the list of presidential candidates and detailed information to the various regions of the Federation for people to look over. This process was undoubtedly promoting the high-level members of Miracle Commerce, allowing the various regions of the Federation to have a deeper understanding of Miracle City and Miracle Commerce. When Luo Yulian saw Chu Tian's rise to dominate the continent, she couldn't believe her eyes. There was actually such a legendary person in this world. She had thought that Miracle Commerce's technology and background had been accumulated over thousands of years, but now it seemed like she was completely wrong. From nothing to something, it only took a total of 5 years. Less than 5 years. What could be done in 5 years? A cultivator could spend 5 years in a closed-door cultivation room. For an expert or a powerful race, 5 years was just a blink of an eye. They didn't have any concept of time at all. The Miracle Commerce created by Chu Tian had grown from nothing in less than 5 years. Now it had gone from a small company in a small country to a giant corporation that spanned the entire continent. Luo Yulian was very interested in the company chairman Chu Tian, but as she learned more about him, everything about this man that flew across the world like a meteor was inconceivable. No one knew where his intelligence came from and why he had so many ideas in his head. His birth, his experiences, everything about him was a mystery. 10 days later, the presidential election was finally held. Luo Yulian followed her family to the election location in the Heavenly Dragon Warring Kingdom's imperial city. It was just Heavenly Dragon Imperial City, but there were 1.5 million people participating in the election. When Luo Yuyan arrived at the election location, she was stunned by the sea of people in front of her. Royal Father, what is going on here? There are so many people, how are we going to vote? The Heavenly Dragon King was a middle-aged man over 50 years old. He never thought that there would be this many people participating in the election in Imperial City. In response to the eldest princess' question, he pointed at the sky. Luo Yuyan looked up at the sky and saw a giant ship appear in the sky above Heavenly Dragon City. This 500-meter-long super ship had the symbols of Miracle Commerce and the Miracle Federation on it, slowly descending into the central square of Imperial City. Too big. Too shocking. How could a giant ship made of metal fly in the sky? This was the country's first time seeing the masterpiece of Miracle Commerce, so every citizen was stunned. This was unavoidable, after all, in the eyes of normal people, Miracle Commerce's work had already surpassed reality and imagination, subverting everyone's common sense. Thank you everyone for supporting the Miracle Federation's first election. This ship is a Heaven's Net giant spiritual and information ship. The first Miracle Federation election will be conducted through spiritual votes. Each participant will use their spiritual energy as proof to vote in the election system. Each vote will be fair and open, laying a democratic and prosperous foundation for the Miracle Federation for generations to come. When everyone heard the voice coming from Miracle Commerce's warship, they were all stunned, unable to express themselves. Spiritual energy votes? This was something that had never been done before or since. Each person's spiritual energy was unique and the probability of having the same spiritual energy was less than 1 in 2 billion. Therefore, anything could be faked, but spiritual energy votes could not be faked. This time the Miracle Federation was open to the public, so it was clear who sent out each spiritual energy vote. Other than that, during the spiritual energy vote process, Miracle Commerce could use spiritual energy to determine if the vote was fair or not because the spiritual energy was directly connected to the mind. If the vote was bought or forced, the spiritual energy vote would not pass. This meant that the Miracle Federation's presidential election did not depend on one's strength. This was true democracy and this was true advancement. The Miracle Federation's presidential term was 10 years. Of course the president could be re-elected, but the election every 10 years meant that the president had to be responsible for his words and actions. Wantonly plundering the people's wealth or tyrannical policies didn't win the hearts of the people, so they would be pushed down from the throne by the people. Similarly, as long as one had outstanding abilities and high morals, they could start from the lowest level to become a governor. Finally, they could participate in the regional presidential election and even become a presidential candidate in the future. Each person had unlimited possibilities, as long as they were outstanding enough. From the local officials to the central president, everyone was like this. This kind of transparent and open political system was unique on the continent. But it gave people unlimited yearning and motivation. From now on, officials would no longer have the privilege of nobles. If they didn't do a good job, they could be pushed down by someone who coveted their position. This kind of competition and supervision would form an open political system that would help maintain the stability of the Miracle Federation and also give these countries hope. There were many people in the Big Dry Empire who were dissatisfied with Miracle City ruling the entire Federation, but with this system, it gave them hope and opportunity. The Big Dry Emperor could enter Miracle City as a presidential candidate in 10 years. With the Big Dry Empire's large population advantage, the Big Dry Emperor would be a strong candidate. Wouldn't the Big Dry Empire take over the Miracle Federation at that time? This sounded whimsical, but this kind of situation could happen and it was reasonable for the Miracle Federation. Chapter 653. The Miracle Federation's presidential election had officially begun. There were a total of 200 areas for the election and there were a total of 10 warships used for the election. Each warship was responsible for 20 areas and each warship would stay for a day to collect votes, so it would take around 20 days in total. Miracle City's votes would be sent to the center and the results would be announced to the entire continent through the media. Although they knew there was no suspense in this election, everyone still paid close attention to it. The various countries even started betting on the rankings of the candidates and the number of votes the president had. 5 days passed. There was a clear trend in the first wave. Chu Tian alone had over 70% of the votes, Meng Qingguo had 20% of the votes, and the remaining 10% belonged to the other candidates. 10 days passed. The second wave of data basically determined the result. Chu Tian still had 65% of the votes and Meng Qingguo had 26% of the votes. The two of them added together already had 91% of the votes, which also meant that the other candidates added together didn't have more than a single digit. These people could already be eliminated. After the Miracle Federation citizens understood the structure of Miracle City and Miracle Commerce, although Chu Tian's position was still high, there were many people who agreed with Meng Qingguo. Chu Tian's supporters were mainly from the middle and lower class because this group didn't know much about Miracle City and Miracle Commerce. Therefore, they were attracted by Chu Tian's personal growth and achievements, causing them to worship Chu Tian. The reason why Meng Qingguo had such a large number of supporters was mainly from the high class. They all knew that whether it was Miracle City or Miracle Commerce, they were all managed by Meng Qingguo. This vice city lord was smart and capable, making everyone who knew her feel admiration. Therefore, Meng Qingguo had a very good support rate. Of course. Actually, whether it was Meng Qingguo or Chu Tian being the president, the meaning was the same. Chu Tian's influence on the continent far surpassed Meng Qingguo's in the hearts of the emperors. This was because Meng Qingguo was smart and capable. If she didn't rely on a person like Chu Tian, she would at most be a successful person in a city or a country, she wouldn't be able to be famous like she was now. Chu Tian was the true soul of the Miracle Federation. The first president of the Miracle Federation would be Chu Tian. As for whether Chu Tian would be the president in the future, or whether it would be Meng Qingguo or another high-level member of Miracle Commerce, or even someone from the Big Dry Empire or another region, it didn't matter. This was because although the Miracle Federation was a country, the core was still Miracle Commerce. As long as Chu Tian and the others held Miracle Commerce in their hands, it didn't matter who was the president of the Miracle Commerce. It was just hiring someone to manage the country. The true lifeline of the country would always be in the hands of Miracle Commerce. Of course, with the people from Miracle Commerce here, it wouldn't be easy for the Big Dry Empire's Big Dry Emperor to run for president. The Big Dry Empire's population was a third of the Miracle Federation, but outside of the Big Dry Empire, the Big Dry Emperor couldn't find any supporters. There were quite a few people in the Big Dry Empire that supported Miracle Commerce, and this number would continue to increase. After the 15th day, there was basically no need to choose anymore. The number of voters already accounted for 75% of the voters, but Chu Tian's votes actually exceeded 50% of the voters. This also meant that even if the remaining people voted for Meng Qingguo, there was nothing they could do. Miracle City immediately announced to the public, the Miracle Federation's first president would be Chu Tian and the vice president would be Meng Qingguo. This result couldn't be changed from the beginning, but now that it was announced, it still caused a large amount of cheers and excitement. Congratulations to the president. Meng Yingying, Nangong Yun, Vivian, and the others all ran out to congratulate Chu Tian on becoming the president. Nangong Yun hugged Meng Yingying and casually said, "Does the president's wife want to treat us to a good meal? My requirements aren't high, just the Miracle Royal Palace's emperor's meal is fine." After these days, Meng Yingying had completely adapted to her identity, so she didn't reveal an embarrassed expression. "All right, not to mention the emperor's meal, we'll introduce a president's meal that's even better than the emperor's meal." "Wah, president's meal." Vivian's eyes lit up. "I want one too." Choosing a president was such an important matter, but these people actually talked about food. They really didn't take this matter seriously. Meng Qingguo walked in from outside and said to these people, "The president has been chosen and the notice has been sent to the continent's joint parliament. We will now hold the president's inaugural speech. Yingying, you're the federation's first lady, so you have to appear." There's also Nangong Yun and Vivian, you're all high-level officials of the Federation, so you have to attend. It's this troublesome. We're different from before, the eyes of the entire continent are watching us, so we still have to go through formalities, this is unavoidable. Meng Qinggu helplessly shrugged her shoulders, but the good news is that our presidential palace has already been built. I think we'll use it today, don't you want to take a good look? The presidential palace. This is great. I want to take a look. Miracle City's City Lord's castle was the City Lord's office. Now that Chu Tian's group had created the Miracle Federation to rule the continent, naturally there should be a new office. Everyone came to the transport tower. After the transport tower lit up, everyone appeared in the main hall of the presidential palace. The main hall of the City Lord's palace seemed to be completely sealed, being around the size of a small plaza. It was made from moon crystal, therefore it looked graceful and noble. The various countries' rulers were all invited here. The Wind Moon Empress looked around and said, "This is Miracle City's new presidential palace? I think it's only SOSO, it's only on the level of this emperor's temporary palace." The other rulers all nodded. Everyone thought that Miracle Commerce's new presidential palace would be very grand, but it seemed like the surrounding materials were high level, but the space wasn't big enough. It couldn't even compare to the Miracle Royal Palace. Everyone's speaking too early. Chu Tian gently snapped his fingers, turn on the exterior mode. The super smart brain received Chu Tian's order and a glow appeared under everyone's feet. The floor quickly became transparent and a shocking scene appeared in front of everyone. The entire plaza's floor turned into a giant map, but when everyone looked carefully, they were shocked to find that this wasn't a map at all, but rather a real image. The continent appeared in front of them. The mountains, lakes, ravines, oceans, and forests, all of it was perfectly displayed. Everyone finally understood what kind of situation Miracle Commerce's presidential palace was. This was a giant floating castle. Chu Tian explained to everyone's shocked expressions with a smile, the Miracle Federation's presidential palace is a floating castle that Miracle City has been building for a long time. This castle is currently only a tenth complete, but it has a rich weapon system, energy system, and defense system. It can stay in the astral wind layer and can also use rockets to charge out of the astral wind layer, entering outer space. Everyone was shocked. How on earth was such a castle built? Chu Tian continued to introduce it to everyone. This presidential palace has the most advanced technology on the continent, including transport technology, weapon technology, energy technology, and communication technology, therefore it can become a permanent floating command center. The future president of the Federation will be able to control the entire Federation from here. This was just too shocking. The heart of the Federation was high in the sky. It could enter the astral wind layer at any time and even enter outer space. Even the strongest army on the continent wouldn't be able to destroy this castle. After all, even a giant dragon couldn't pass through the astral wind layer, so they couldn't do anything even if they had strength. People began to arrive at this time. Not only were there guests from the various countries, there were also the regional presidents of Miracle City and the Big Dry Emperor. When the Big Dry Emperor saw the Miracle Federation's presidential palace, he understood why he lost. But it was fine. Although he lost, he didn't lose everything. The Miracle Federation's strong potential was gradually being revealed. The Big Dry Emperor wasn't that old, and with his cultivation, living another 500-600 years wasn't a problem. In these 500-600 years, the Big Dry Emperor could at least hold the position of the Big Dry Empire's regional president. Although the Miracle Federation's president position couldn't be inherited, the Big Dry Empire's advantage was something other families couldn't compare to. In the future, their heirs would be able to run for the Big Dry Empire's president position. Because of this competition, the Big Dry Empire's royal family would have a stronger life force. The Big Dry Emperor had already put down his complaints, he now had a bigger goal. In the next several hundred years, he decided to change his face and become a good president. He would govern the Big Dry Empire well and win the hearts of the people, challenging the presidential palace in the future. The big dry emperor could already see that Chu Tian didn't have any interest in being the president. It was fine if he was the president for 1 or 2 terms, but if he was the president forever, with Chu Tian's personality, he would be bored. After Chu Tian abdicated, Meng Qingguo could be the president for a few more terms, but Miracle Commerce's ambition wasn't the president position, they just needed to firmly grasp Miracle Commerce in their hands. As long as these two gave up on running for president in the future, wouldn't the big dry emperor have a chance to sit in the supreme position of the continent? The big dry emperor had lost his goal in the past, so he was blindly arrogant. Now that he had reached a higher height, he had regained his ambition and motivation. At worst, he would just have to wait 200-300 years. The live broadcast has been prepared. The Miracle Federation's City Lord's Palace and the Miracle Federation's President Chu Tian's speech will be sent to every corner of the continent. Now let's invite the president to speak. The people of the continent watched the live broadcast on their screens. The first thing that appeared on this screen was the full view of the City Lord's Palace. This was an image taken from a fighter jet. Miracle Commerce had spent several months to build the presidential palace. Although it didn't look complete and there were many areas that were still being built, one could see the grandeur of the presidential palace. A low and deep voice began to introduce it. The Miracle Federation's presidential palace was a floating castle made from Miracle Commerce's top technology. There were currently 10 large warships combined together and it looked snow-white, giving people an indestructible feeling. This floating castle would become the symbol of the presidential palace. It would stay in the sky above Miracle City and its orders would spread across the entire Miracle Federation, becoming the brain of the Miracle Federation that hung in the sky. Chu Tian and Meng Qingguo, the two presidents of the Federation, officially took office after a ceremony. After the two of them gave their inaugural speech, they announced the current situation of the Miracle Federation. The Miracle Federation had over 160 small and large countries and several thousand large cities divided into 8 regions. Each region began to elect a president. All the kings of the Federation could apply to become a candidate for the region's president. Another region's president was born like a raging fire. In the end, the Forest of Chaos region's president was the Elven King Lancelot, the Big Dry Empire's president was the Big Dry Emperor, the Great Zhou Queen Chen Bingyu was the president of the 30 northern countries, the Dragon Lord Nidhogg was the president of the 30 southern countries, Jean Luo was the president of the 30 western countries, and the 30 eastern countries, as well as the underground and outer space regions, were all presided over by Thunder's Fury, Burst Claw, and other people of virtue. The presidents of these regions came to the presidential palace and each one represented their region to give their inaugural speech to the people of the continent. Meng Qingguo announced the Miracle Federation's administrative levels from low to high, city, state, member country, federal district, and Great Federation. The positions from low to high were City Lord, State Governor, King, Regional President, and Great Federation. From the prefectural governor level onwards, an election system was adopted to ensure that the entire country was fair and peaceful. In other words, from the Federation's president to the prefectural governor of a small country, everyone had to be elected through a spiritual popular election. This kind of system was unique on the continent. The Miracle Federation was not just a unique miracle state on the continent, it was also the most free and democratic region on the continent. This kind of mind made the rulers of the continent admire and feel assured at the same time. Since there was no inheritance, as long as one was a citizen of the Federation, they could run for president. This could only mean that the Miracle Federation and Chu Tian did not have any ambitions to swallow the continent, or at least they did not have too big of an ambition. Of course, for a giant like the Miracle Federation, it was not something that could be established in just a few short months. The various countries and powers needed to unite and work together. When the presidential palace's speech ended and everyone was about to put in more effort into their work, Miracle City and even the Forest of Chaos were suddenly shaken. Although it was not strong, it spread across a wide area and lasted for a long time, allowing everyone to deeply feel the power that was exploding from underground. Chapter 654. What happened? Chu Tian was attending an event, but he had to hurry back when he heard that something had happened. Meng Qinggu had a serious expression as she showed some images and data to Chu Tian. The specific situation isn't clear right now, but we have information from the Purgatory World. It said that the Purgatory World suddenly erupted with a disaster that killed at least 10 million Purgatory World beings. The Purgatory World mines we developed with the other empires have all been destroyed, so the situation underground is very serious. What? Causing the deaths of millions of Purgatory World creatures. The other people from Miracle Commerce were stunned. What did 10 million mean? The Purgatory World was very far from the surface, but even the surface could feel the Purgatory World shaking. Only the heavens knew what had happened in the Purgatory World just now. The Purgatory World was a subsidiary of Miracle City and was now the Miracle Federation's main area. The Purgatory World's president was Meiji, and now that such a large matter had happened in the Purgatory World, it wasn't just the Miracle Federation that suffered losses. This was because Miracle City had already opened the Purgatory World to the first Miracle Summit, allowing people from various countries to mine. Now that there was a disaster in the Purgatory World, other than Miracle Commerce and the Purgatory World suffering losses, the other countries on the continent, especially the 6 countries that had a deep relationship with Miracle City, all suffered large casualties because of this matter. Chu Tian, what's going on? I received an urgent report that the Purgatory World exploded. What happened? What if the Purgatory World destroys our production? The Purgatory World materials are a very important strategic resource for us, and we need them to produce the miracle helmets. This will seriously affect our production speed. True enough. Negan had just been in trouble. Chu Tian's communicator rang non-stop. The emperors all wanted an explanation. Everyone suffered heavy losses in the Purgatory World, so these people could only find Chu Tian for an explanation. Who told the Purgatory World to be developed by Chu Tian? Since it was Chu Tian's territory, they had to blame Chu Tian. Chu Tian said to everyone, I don't know the exact situation right now, but President Purgatory has just returned to investigate. It said that the Purgatory World's Devil's Gate ruins exploded because of a change. The Burning Heaven Emperor said angrily, just what is going on? Why did it explode all of a sudden? The mine we built in the Purgatory World with great difficulty has been destroyed. The Wild Beast Emperor was also very dissatisfied with this incident. President Chu Tian, I know that you have been very busy recently, but this matter must be investigated clearly, whether it is a man-made disaster or a natural disaster. The others expressed their agreement. This matter might not be that simple. Chu Tian had already guessed the reason, but regarding this matter, Chu Tian didn't dare make any wild assumptions, so he said to everyone, I'm afraid I have to ask everyone to come with me to the Purgatory World. There was no other way. He had to go to the Purgatory World. It was a good thing the 6 emperors had transport towers in their palaces and residences, so although they were going to the Purgatory World, it was no different from going to their back garden. Chu Tian invited everyone to gather at Darkness City's transport tower. 5 minutes later, Chu Tian and the 6 emperors arrived at Darkness City's transport tower. They once again sighed at Miracle City's technology. Without this transport tower, they didn't know how much effort it would take to go to the Purgatory World. When they arrived in the Purgatory World, they immediately found that the Purgatory World was a bit different from before. The flames above their heads were much dimmer, turning into a strange green. This also made the Purgatory World's light dim, and there was a kind of cold and evil aura in the air. The Dragon Elder said in a low voice, such a strong evil energy. The Wind Moon Empress nodded in agreement. This feeling has never been felt before, it seems like something big has happened. A succubus quickly rushed over. It was Meiji who was in charge of managing the Purgatory World for Miracle City. We have already investigated it. The reason for this incident was a large-scale eruption of energy from the Devil's Gate. Now there is no life within 1,000 miles of the Devil's Gate, but we still haven't found out why this happened. Understood. You can leave first. Chu Tian guessed that it was the Devil's Gate, and without saying anything else, his eyes turned white and a powerful spatial energy was released. instantly covering the 6 emperors. Everyone appeared outside the Devil's Gate area in a flash. President Chu Tian's strength has increased by quite a bit. That's right, that's right. There aren't many people on the continent that can compare to his spatial abilities. Chu Tian said with tightly knit brows, now isn't the time to worry about this, look in front of you. When everyone looked forward, they were all dumbfounded. Their vision was filled with darkness, and the ground seemed to have been crystallized. From the mountain peaks to the ground, everything had turned into black crystals. These crystals were like ice cubes that emitted cold air, and they were constantly emitting black steam, giving off an extremely strange feeling. The Netherworld Sea's Nether King said in a low voice, a power that can crystallize everything within 1,000 miles, this already surpasses our limits. Accurately speaking, it surpasses the limit of our world, this matter is definitely not simple. Spatial eyes. Chu Tian used a special technique and his vision could be seen from any angle. He could see the Devil's Gate in the distance releasing light. The Devil's Gate ruins in the Purgatory world were all affected by this situation. There was a steady stream of black energy coming from them, finally landing in the center of the Devil's Gate. There was a giant whirlpool in the center. That's right, it's the Abyss Gate. Chu Tian took back his vision and gave a sigh, if the Purgatory world's Devil's Gate is connected, then it will have an effect. For example, it will form an incomparably large array in front of us. It will suck in enough energy from the abyss and then open a passage from the inside to the outside. This is far more effective than an outsider breaking in from the outside. Time and space were being twisted. From the center of the dark and twisted whirlpool, there was a kind of evil energy constantly seeping out. That's right, the source was here. Chu Tian looked at the Devil's Gate array and felt that the situation was very bad. This was because the feeling coming from the center of the array was a kind of evil and sinister abyss aura. With this kind of aura coming out, there was only one problem. The Abyss Gate was about to be opened. The Wild Beast Emperor didn't understand, what are you saying? What is going on? You're saying. The Nether King was very knowledgeable and his body slightly trembled. This was a very human-like movement. This energy is pouring into the center to open a passage to the other plane. Chu Tian said with a nod, it's not wrong to think like this. The Burning Heaven Emperor's eyes popped out, you're saying that through this gate, we can go to another world? This idea was too optimistic. Chu Tian looked back at the continent's history and he clearly remembered that when the Abyss Gate opened, it had already been 7,000–8,000 years since humanity's source energy technology had been developed. The continent had over 100,000 warships and there were hundreds or even thousands of advanced weapons compared to now. He was in a rush to open the Abyss Gate, but it shouldn't be this fast. This was clearly not a normal phenomenon. Could it be that because of the destruction of the Devil's Gate ruins, the Abyss had appeared on the continent ahead of time? Chu Tian was very clear on how terrifying the Abyss world was. If the continent faced the Abyss in its current state, it would be destroyed in an instant. They had to give Chu Tian at least 20 years to develop before he had the confidence to fight the Abyss. If the Abyss Gate was opened too early, it would be a disaster for the entire continent. The situation here is more serious than we imagined. Chu Tian looked around at the 6 emperors and said, just the 6 of us can't deal with the situation here, we need to find everyone above the 6th heaven domain layer. Everyone? That's right, everyone, the more the better. The only thing Chu Tian was glad about was that he found it in time. If it was 3–5 days later and the Abyss Gate was opened, the result would have been completely different. The continent's civilization and countries didn't seem weak, but if they were taken to the Abyss, they wouldn't be able to survive for more than a few years. These people didn't know how terrifying the planar passage was. Which of these emperors weren't geniuses? But why did everyone's cultivation stop at the peak 9th heaven domain layer? This was because the strongest power was restricted by the laws, otherwise once an expert surpassing the heaven domain realm was born, the world would lack a sense of security and anyone would be able to use their special abilities. Chu Tian knew the value of the planar passage, but this value could only be reflected in the planar passage. If they opened the planar passage now, it was no different from seeking death. Chu Tian didn't want the foundation that Xing Xing had painstakingly built to be destroyed overnight. Chapter 655. Now that Chu Tian's influence on the continent was unprecedented, with Chu Tian's words, the various countries had to pay attention to it. The 19 Emperor-level characters were sent to Darkness City. Other than the 19 Emperor-level characters, there were also 120 peak experts in the 6th heaven domain layer and above. This was the first time these people came to the Purgatory world, so they were stunned by the scene in the Purgatory world. They were especially shocked by the demonic aura that filled this place. This dark energy was so strong that it actually crystallized an area of 1,000 miles. This was a calamity that none of the recent natural disasters on the continent could compare to. This problem is very serious, it's not something a single person can solve. Remember, this matter is not small, it concerns the life and death of the entire continent. So, at this time, we have to work together. Chu Tian spoke to everyone as the Miracle Federation's president. Everyone was confused about what was happening. An emperor couldn't help asking, "What is happening here? Can you explain it clearly?" Chu Tian directly connected to Darkness City's smart brain and had the smart brain project the images of the drones onto the screen. Everyone could clearly see that the area the drones had scanned was a world of black crystals. There were several bulging areas that were constantly spitting out black energy like volcanoes. This energy was being pulled to the center and gathered. None of the people present were ordinary people. Everyone could already see that the volcanoes spitting out dark energy were condensing the energy at a single point, causing the space and time in that area to distort. There was an unheard of super large array in the Purgatory world. This was something a human couldn't do. Simply put, our world is trying to be opened. Chu Tian pointed at the image and said, "These volcanoes spitting out dark energy are actually the Purgatory world's Devil's Gate ruins." The so-called Devil's Gate can be understood as a loophole in a plane. Most of the time, the loophole is sealed, but under certain circumstances, the loophole in the plane can be used. It is extremely difficult to open a plane from the outside, but it is relatively easy to open it from the inside to the outside. The current situation is that there are beings from outside this plane. They have discovered our existence and the existence of these holes, so these beings used the Devil's Gate to release energy into the Purgatory world. Finally, this energy gathered in this plane, gradually forming a planar gate. This was the first time everyone had heard of such a thing. Someone else asked, "What happens if the planar gate opens?" Chu Tian replied, "Every plane has a door that leads to the outside world. Once a plane is opened, you will directly enter the plane era." However, the beginning of the plane era often symbolized two things. One was colonizing, and the other was being colonized. If our mainland develops to a point where it is strong enough, it can open up the passage between planes and start the era of planes. Then, we will become plane colonists. But the problem now is that the mainland is far from being able to open up the era of planes. So, once our world is opened, we may become the colonists. As soon as he said that, everyone's expressions changed. Chu Tian continued to say, "Everyone, don't think that I'm just trying to scare you. In a sealed plane, there is an upper limit to its power. It is because of this that the continent cannot give birth to experts above the heaven domain realm. Once a plane is opened, the spiritual energy of the outside world will connect and the laws of the continent's upper limit will be broken. But the abyss world has never had an upper limit for tens of thousands of years. The experts of our world are only normal people in their eyes. According to the normal development of the continent, it would take at least 10,000 years for it to have the qualifications to open the plane era. This was because after 10,000 years, technology would have reached its peak and the continent would have several million warships with nowhere to spend them. Opening the plane era at this time would allow people to quickly occupy a place in the abyss battlefield and begin planar campaigns and colonization. What was the current situation of the continent? There were less than 100 warships on the continent. These warships were all primary continent-level warships produced by Miracle Commerce. A continent-level warship and a plane-level warship were two different things. It could be said that 100 continent-level warships added together couldn't compare to a single plane-level warship. The current level of the continent didn't have the ability to open the Abyss battlefield at all. If they rashly entered the Abyss world, they would only be destroyed, and the best result would be being enslaved by the invaders. Chu Tian had already explained it clearly, and everyone's faces began to change. There were people with faces filled with shock as they shouted, "Your meaning is that the Purgatory world's energy explosion is something in the Abyss world that took the initiative to do something?" "That's right. It's like when someone found a coconut. What they're doing to our world now is to use a hammer to pry open this delicious and juicy coconut. So if we don't take any measures, once they really come in, our world will be in danger." Although everyone guessed that this matter was very serious, they never thought it would be this serious. This kind of terrifying energy explosion should have been an unprecedented genius, but now Chu Tian was telling everyone that this was not a natural disaster, but rather a man-made disaster. The consequences of a man-made disaster were 100 to 1,000 times worse than a natural disaster. The Dragon Elder directly asked, "Just tell us directly, how can we stop it?" Chu Tian replied, "I am prepared to cut off the energy of the planar gate and then place a large array to seal the planar gate. This matter is not easy to do because it is very likely that the outsiders have already used the channel to send their troops in. Only by working together will we have a chance of completing this." The Nether King asked in a hoarse voice, "What are the specific steps?" "This is the reason why I invited everyone here. You are all the strongest experts on the continent. As long as we work together, we can definitely solve this crisis." Chu Tian stood on the map and pointed, "Not only do we need to stop the Devil's Gate from sending energy, we also need to completely seal the planar gate to the Abyss. Everyone here will split into 4 groups and head to the Devil's Gate, using the array flags I made to cut off the energy eruption near the Devil's Gate ruins. As long as the energy supply is stopped, the Abyss planar gate will stop opening. We will use Miracle City's space gate to send our troops in to suppress the demons. The emperors will follow me to the central planar gate to clean up the area and completely seal the Abyss planar gate." Chu Tian described the plan to everyone. Everyone looked at each other and nodded. This matter was not small, after all, it was related to the survival of the continent. There was no intact egg when the nest was overturned, so no matter what kind of dissatisfaction they had to work together to resist the invasion of a strong enemy. After Chu Tian gave the order, he used Miracle Commerce's resources to make preparations. The others weren't idle either. Everyone gathered experts from various countries, and even many experts living in seclusion were alarmed by this matter. Finally, in just 7 days, the over 100 experts in the 6th heaven domain layer and above increased to over 200. The Purgatory world's Darkness City had basically gathered the peak battle strength of the continent. "Chu Tian, there's a strange situation, it's best if you take a look at this." Chu Tian was called to Darkness City's temporary command center by Meng Qingguo. He saw that everyone was already present and they all had dark and serious expressions as they looked at the screen. This was the image captured by Miracle Commerce's drone near the Abyss planar gate. They saw that the Abyss planar gate was quickly forming and there were groups of strange things coming out of the Abyss planar gate. There were already over 1,000 of them. There was a sharp cry. There was a dragon-like creature that flew into the air and grabbed onto Miracle Commerce's drone. Finally, with a large sound, the drone's transmission was cut off. Eunice said to Chu Tian with a calm expression, "What does the president think?" "The Abyss planar gate is opening faster than we imagined. These are the advanced troops to invade the plains." Chu Tian said with knit brows, "But everyone doesn't need to worry too much because the planar channel hasn't been completely opened yet. Those that can come through this channel right now, they aren't too strong and it's impossible for any existences above the heaven domain realm to appear, so we still have a way to deal with them. But many a little makes a mickle, it will be hard to implement our plan." "That's right, we should think of a way to deal with the Abyss planar gate as soon as possible." Everyone was already feeling uneasy. Although the advance troops coming from the Abyss battlefield weren't strong, it was enough to see that this was a planned invasion. These fellows would definitely think of a way to confront Darkness City after coming in. As long as they could drag it out for another 5-8 days, the planar gate would connect to the Abyss and the terrifying beings from the Abyss would be able to invade this world. Everyone can be assured, I've already prepared everything. We'll start planning the operation now. Chu Tian had already prepared all the necessary tools and the various countries had already sent their elites to Miracle City to prepare the space gate. With regards to this battle, no one dared be careless. Because once these beings succeeded, their so-called empire and everything they had would be completely washed away like a flood. Chu Tian looked over the current manpower and began to assign tasks. We have a total of 260 cultivators in the 6th heaven domain layer and these 260 people will be divided into 4 teams. Prepare yourselves and appear near the 4 energy volcanoes at the same time to activate the array I made. Remember to seal them at the same time. As long as the energy volcanoes are sealed, the Abyss planar gate will stop expanding, but it won't disappear. We will charge in at this time and destroy it, completely stopping the Abyss from invading. Alright. We'll do it like this. Chapter 656. The Purgatory world was already dark and gloomy. Now that the Devil's Gate had erupted, large amounts of negative energy gathered, making this place seem even more strange and terrifying. The flames that came from the dome of the earth were the main source of light in the Purgatory world. Now that the flames were being filled with energy, the original dark red or yellow flames turned into a strange green flame. The canyon where the Devil's Gate was located was now filled with energy volcanoes. Countless streams of black energy flowed out like a waterfall, constantly spilling out of the volcanoes. Hung, hung, hung. The ear-piercing screams were like 10,000 beasts charging. This is the energy volcano. Lancelot looked at the scene in front of him in shock. Even he found it hard to suppress his heart palpitations. Just how strong was the energy released to form this kind of might? The energy spewing out from the volcano could destroy an entire city every second. How strong was the energy released after so many days? If it was released, it would be enough to cause a world-shaking disaster. Now that it was gathered to open the Abyss Gate, it could be seen just how terrifying the Abyss was. The array flags have been placed. Lancelot looked around. Although the energy volcano was very large and the surrounding energy was very dense, it was impossible to see where everyone was with the naked eye and it was impossible to communicate in this noisy environment, but it was possible to use divine sense. Lancelot's divine sense was connected to several experts in the 6th heaven domain layer and above. Now everyone was scattered around the energy volcano and there was a giant flag in front of each person. This flag was made from the blood of demons and gods as an array flag. The energy volcano was a kind of barrier. As long as they could find a way to suppress it, then it wouldn't pose a threat. With the array flags personally refined by Chu Tian and all these peak experts present, there shouldn't be any problems. After all, they had discovered this in time. It was fortunate that Miracle City had the transport array and communication system, otherwise even if someone discovered this danger, they wouldn't be able to enter the Purgatory world in time and could only watch as the continent fell into a calamity. Everyone, please calm down. Remember, we must wait until the other 3 sealing grounds are ready before we can make our move. President Chu Tian said that the 4 energy volcanoes are connected to each other, so we have to seal them together. Otherwise, if we seal 1 or 2 of them, the others will be a bit slower. Then the energy of the sealed volcano will erupt from the other 3 volcanoes, strengthening the other 3 volcanoes. This will make it harder to deal with them. Lancelot used his divine sense to transmit his thoughts to everyone and repeated what Chu Tian had told them. Everyone had a serious expression on their faces. They were all top experts of the continent, but now, they had no choice but to admire Chu Tian. Chu Tian was indeed the most outstanding genius of the continent in tens of thousands of years. If it wasn't for Chu Tian's early discovery of this crisis and his suggestion to resolve it, who knows what would have happened. They waited for about 10 minutes. Meng Qinggu used the communication device to speak to Lancelot and the people in charge of the other 3 sealing points. Attention, attention, everyone is ready. The countdown begins now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 2, 1. Begin the seal. Lancelot suddenly released his divine sense, start the large array. Dozens of experts held onto the array flags and used their essence force in a steady flow. After these flags were planted in the ground, they moved without any wind and released a powerful energy. A violent and turbulent wave was released from the flags, and the ground was instantly covered in spiderweb-like patterns. These patterns connected with each other and finally formed a huge circular array that covered the entire volcano. The energy erupting from the volcano suddenly shrank by half. Several dozen 6th Heaven Domain layer experts and above were responsible for the array, and there were over 100 Heaven Domain experts nearby responsible for replenishing the energy. It could be imagined how strong this super sealing array was. Countless array patterns and runes covered the volcano, finally forming a floating source energy array at the mouth of the volcano, forcefully sealing the mouth of the volcano. They were about to succeed. Chu Tian and the other emperors stood 30-40 miles away from the Abyss Gate. The surging energy in the sky quickly weakened, and the energy of the abyssal planar gate in front of them was also rapidly weakening. When the thick black clouds dissipated, everyone saw the creatures surrounding the abyssal planar gate. These creatures all looked like abyss demons. Some looked like octopuses, some looked like insects. In short, they were all very strange. These creatures were obviously highly intelligent creatures with a technological civilization, because there were a few small spaceships above their heads. Of course. These airships and battleships were completely different from the ones Miracle Commerce made. Each one was shaped like a ball, ranging from several dozen meters to over 100 meters. The surface was covered in a fungus that slowly moved. This was not a man-made product at all. Rather it was a natural monster, but it was these abyssal life forms that were released. These strange things came from the demons of the Abyss battlefield. The Abyss demons had already found the problem, and they all let out restless and angry roars, using the language of the Abyss. Several hairy ball-shaped spaceships activated at the same time, preparing to attack in all directions. They had clearly realized that the energy to open the Abyss Gate was weakening, so they were thinking of a way to stop this. Chu Tian quickly said, "Young miss, it's about time. Open the space gate." "Alright, the spatial coordinates have been determined. The nearby energy is dissipating and the spatial interference is within range." Meng Qingwu's voice came from the communication device, currently opening the space gate. Just as the abyssal creatures were about to attack, they suddenly felt a strong fluctuation in space, and a radiant space gate suddenly appeared in their field of vision. Roar, roar. These abyssal creatures roared in anger when they saw this, and instantly began to surge like a tide. Flames, lightning, balls of darkness, and all kinds of dazzling attacks emerged from this army, raining down in a frenzy. They clearly wanted to destroy the spatial portal before it was fully formed. Protect the space gate. There was no need for Chu Tian to do this at all. The 10 emperors all flew into the air to block the space gate. Their source spirits were released and they joined hands to create a giant barrier, using the strength of 10 people to block the dense wave of attacks. The space gate gradually became clear. Even if it only took another minute or two for it to form. The attacks released by these abyss demons were becoming stronger and stronger. Those flying machines that looked like hairy ball also began to show their effects. Beams of destructive light shot out, creating large cracks in the barrier. Even with the strength of 10 emperors, it was hard for them to block it. At this time, there were several flying demons quickly approaching. Their mouths were filled with surging energy, looking like they wanted to destroy the space gate before it formed. Cut! At this critical moment, an emperor flew out from the ground and released his source spirit, which was tens of thousands of different swords. The giant sword in his hand became several hundred feet long and the tens of thousands of source spirit swords were attached to it, instantly turning the giant sword in his hand into a multicolored sword. With a single slash, the heaven and earth split apart as a large group of monsters were killed. Another emperor-level character flew out from the ground. His body was covered in a golden glow and his aura was shocking. He was like a golden armored war god as he charged into an abyss demon ship. The terrifying power immediately shattered the abyss demon ship. The opening of the abyss gate was very limited, so the creatures that came out weren't very strong. The abyss demon ship's capacity was also very low. Of course, the difference in strength was relative. They were weak compared to the strength of the abyss, but these monsters were all in the first or second layer of the heaven domain layer. Even if it was these strange abyss demon ships, they weren't much inferior to the warships made by Miracle Commerce. Finally, the space gate successfully formed. When Miracle City's space gate was formed, the first to come out were over 100 Miracle Commerce Black Thunder fighters, followed by 2 warships, and then hundreds and thousands of experts charged out. These were all experts recruited from various countries. There were also various undead, dragons, giant dragons, titans, behemoths, and other creatures, reaching 10,000 in a short period of time. The Abyss army was shocked seeing this. This was clearly very low level. How could there be this kind of technology? The armies of the 2 worlds clashed in the Purgatory world. Although the Abyss army was very strong, there were too few of them and their reinforcements were very slow. Miracle City had an endless stream of top-level soldiers coming through the space gate, so the Abyss army was quickly suppressed. Chu Tian used his divine sense to communicate with the other emperors. Everyone, don't waste time, immediately close the Abyss gate with me. All right. The emperors all flew into the air, surrounding the Abyss gate. The Abyssal gate was actually a planar passage that was torn open. It was actually very simple to close the Abyssal gate. As long as the energy that maintained the Abyssal gate was destroyed, the Abyssal gate would lose its balance, and the planar law would automatically restore the spacetime that was supported by stealth. Everyone attacked the Abyss gate together. The 19 emperors released their source spirits at the same time. This could be said to be the strongest attack the continent had seen in tens of thousands of years. The terrifying attacks all flew at the Abyss gate at the same time. If this attack could hit the Abyss gate, it would definitely be able to disrupt it. Who would have thought that when everyone's attacks were about to hit the Abyss gate, there would be an angry roar coming from the Abyss gate? An octopus-like tentacle fiercely stretched out from the spacetime crack. It was 2,000 feet long and 40 to 50 meters thick. Its surface was covered with tens of thousands of eyeballs. This was clearly a part of the body of a terrifying abyssal great demon. Chu Tian's expression changed. This is bad, quickly dodge. This giant tentacle stood up like a dangerous snake and the eyes on it lit up at the same time. Tens of thousands of beams of death light shot out in all directions, instantly forming a terrifying death net in the Purgatory world. A small mountain in the distance was hit by a beam of light and the entire peak was turned to dust. It could be imagined how strong these beams of light were. As long as any living being was hit by these beams of light, there was no way they could escape. Chapter 657. In front of this terrifying creature, what did the emperors count for? When did these proud emperors realize that the world they lived in was just a drop in the ocean of the world? What they could see was just a small part of the world. When did they ever think that there was always someone better out there? While the monarchs were frantically dodging, the terrifying eyes followed them like shadows. As long as they locked onto the monarchs, the power would explode. First, they would release mental and soul attacks to slow down the monarchs. Then, they would shoot out death beams. Hung, hung, hung. Each attack would cause space and time to tremble. Every time it struck, it would produce an unbelievable amount of power. These experts that thought they stood at the peak of the world, when faced with this overwhelming power, they could only desperately defend. But the defenses they condensed with all their might couldn't even block a single attack from this terrifying creature. It was like the sky was being torn apart. The emperors all spat out blood as they retreated. There were several of them that were already heavily injured. Without the emperors blocking the front, countless beams of death continued to shoot behind them. The sky collapsed and the universe was torn apart. There were even cracks in the space all around. Miracle City's reinforcements were swept by hundreds of beams of light and a third of them were instantly destroyed. The powerful warships didn't even have time to show their might. A thick beam of light that wasn't dazzling fell on it. It collapsed on its own. This several hundred-meter-long giant was shattered into particles that were hard to see with the naked eye. It completely disappeared into the air, like it had never appeared. At this moment, a sword-wielding monarch roared angrily. The huge sword in his hands turned into 100 meters long, and countless sword souls appeared on it. Each of them condensed an extremely sharp might, and they slashed at the tentacle with a momentum that could split the heavens and split the earth, seas, and mountains. In the end, when the tentacle faced the Emperor's attack, not only did it not dodge or defend, it even took the initiative to attack. The eyes on the surface of the tentacle disappeared, turning into Abyss Curse runes. When the arm covered in deep purple Abyss Curse runes touched the sword glow, everyone heard the sound of glass shattering. Actually, it wasn't glass that shattered, rather it was space itself. Those elites with cultivations lower than the Heaven Domain realm were shaken and they all spat out blood. The giant sword in the Emperor's hand shattered and he also spat out a large mouthful of blood into the sky. He was sent flying like a rocket and it seemed like he had completely lost his battle strength. This Emperor was called the Sacred Sword Emperor, the #1 sword cultivator on the continent. This sword cultivator was known for his fierce attacks. An expert that could cultivate to the Emperor level, it was something that could only be achieved with countless fortuitous encounters and powerful talents. This great Emperor's attack power was enough to rank in the top 3 in the entire continent, and not necessarily the third. Such a powerful existence couldn't even leave a scratch on the tentacle. Instead, he was sent flying by a single strike from the tentacle. This several hundred-meter-long tentacle covered in purple and black runes was raised high into the air before slamming into the ground. The ground in a several dozen-mile radius shattered and a terrifying shockwave spread several hundred meters. Miracle City's reinforcements were all sent flying and the space gate was destroyed by the giant impact. A shockwave even passed through the space gate into Miracle City, instantly destroying several dozen buildings and shattering 4 or 5 mountain peaks. All of Miracle City was violently shaken and it didn't recover for several minutes. The emperors were all heavily injured. When they saw the huge crater with a diameter of dozens of miles, the cracked ground, and the mountain of corpses, everyone was deeply shocked and shocked. They were all proud of standing at the peak of the world, fighting for a small piece of land and almost falling out with Miracle City for a position on the continent. Now the cruel truth was in front of them. What kind of creature was this? Its main body didn't come in at all, just relying on a single tentacle to suppress all the experts on the continent. Too terrifying. Too strong. This strength wasn't on the same level at all. If this creature appeared on the continent, perhaps there was nothing in the world that could defeat it. Even if it was just a single tentacle, it was enough to make people feel shock and despair. After this tentacle released this shocking attack, it didn't continue attacking. It was probably in the eyes of this creature that these fellows weren't worth wasting time on. The tentacle stood up high again and the 200-meter-long length drilled into the ground. The runes on its surface lit up and a power that could tear apart the earth spread in all directions. Wherever it went, mountains crumbled and the earth cracked. The several dozen miles of earth was torn apart in the blink of an eye and the terrifying wave of energy continued to move forward. The Wind Moon Empress held her chest as she shouted with a pale face, "What does it want to do? This is bad." The dragon elder that had lived for tens of thousands of years revealed a look of fear and shock. It wants to destroy the energy volcano seal and continue to open the Abyss Gate. Because the Abyss Gate was too small, the monster couldn't come in completely. If the energy volcano seal was destroyed and the Abyss Gate was opened a bit bigger, even if 2 or 3 tentacles could come in, it would be invincible in this world. No matter how many people came, it wouldn't be afraid. Stop it. The emperors had already thrown away all distracting thoughts at this moment. In order to stop this monster from destroying the energy volcano seal, they had to use secret techniques that burned their essence, blood, life, and even their souls. Using their cultivation and lifespan as the price, they could increase their cultivation several times in a short period of time. This was something that couldn't be helped. If this terrifying creature invaded the world, the continent would be finished. The emperors used secret techniques to strengthen their cultivation and attack the tentacle at the same time, but they could only barely suppress it. This state couldn't last long. The Wind Moon Empress was burning with the flame of life and her hair was showing signs of turning white. Her beautiful face was twisted to the extreme as she shouted with all her strength, "Chu Tian, we can't last a few seconds, quickly think of a way." The emperors were already filled with despair. It seemed like they couldn't stop this attack at all with this bit of strength. Now they could only place their hopes on Chu Tian, who wasn't as strong as them. They could only hope that Chu Tian could think of a way to deal with it or create another miracle. Chu Tian was heavily injured, and seeing the emperors and the great abyss demons being defeated, he gave a sigh. He never thought that things would reach this point. This plane was too weak right now. If the plane era opened tens of thousands of years early, the consequences would be unimaginable. It was all because of Chu Tian's activities in the Purgatory world that caused the Purgatory world's seal to loosen. Chu Tian never thought that this would happen. This giant tentacle had already dug into the ground and the earth-shattering power continued to spread. Under the terrifying impact of this power, the surrounding environment and terrain changed. The flat plains turned into large canyons, the towering mountains collapsed into ruins, and the energy volcano seals were almost destroyed in an instant. "I don't care who you are, since Father is in this plane, don't even think of touching an inch of it. Scram back to where you came from." Chu Tian released his nine-eyed demon god Source Spirit, but his 9 eyes closed at the same time. One of the eyes that had been closed the entire time opened, but it could only barely open a small crack. Chu Tian's eyes disappeared. It was a transparent color of emptiness. This emptiness was not empty, rather this emptiness was everything. It encompassed the world, seeing through all beings. The tentacle was about to defeat the emperors, but it suddenly felt something at this time. It violently twitched and quickly changed directions, attempting to attack Chu Tian. Too late. This power transcended the elements, the material, the spirit, the soul, and the space-time. It stood above all living beings and transcended all things in the world. However, it ruled over all living beings and controlled time and everything in the world. It was a power that truly transcended everything. Even someone as strong as a god couldn't resist it. Chu Tian's target was not the great abyss demon's tentacle, rather he used the power of destiny to forcefully close the abyss gate. A painful howl came from the tentacle, and when the space gate closed, the terrifying tentacle couldn't retreat at all, so it was cut in half. Chu Tian fell from the sky. He had already fainted. There were only a few survivors left. Everyone looked at the ground covered in wounds and were stunned for a long time, not coming back to their senses. The losses in this battle were too large. There were at least 100 Heaven Domain experts that had died, and the 19 emperors that participated in the battle were all heavily injured. Moreover, their injuries were quite serious. "Quickly! Seal this gate." The emperors worked together to seal the position of the gate of the abyss once again to prevent it from being opened again. This sudden battle was finally over, but the price paid was a little too heavy. Countless experts from various countries died, and the armies were almost completely wiped out. More than 10 emperors were seriously injured, and it would be difficult for them to recover in the next 10 years. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.